Welcome back to He's a Giant, a pod about all things Giants football and all things college football. I'm Sal here with my co-host Monty. What's going on, Monty?
What's going on, man? Desperately hoping that Mitch Trubisky can blow this game for the Steelers right now. I'm
We're
hoping
recording
when you're
this.
listening to this, you're all celebrating a Patriots win with us.
We're recording this in the fourth quarter of the Patriots Steelers game, and I want to thank Monty for ruining my piece. I had accepted our fate, and then a couple hours ago he tried to talk me out of it. So I completely am going to blame him if this goes awry. Anyway, so we got a special episode planned for you guys today. It is our first mock draft, and we're not doing the Giants 7 round mock. We'll probably do that at some other point. This is a first round mock, all 32 teams. We're going to try to mock this and pick players that we think the teams will take, including the Giants. It's not necessarily what we would take, but we're trying to make it make sense. So we're going to go team by team, try to give you a little bit of explanation. A lot of the heard of in our breakdowns by position groups. Some of them are guys you haven't heard of because they were risers throughout the season. But we're going to do our best to try to make this make sense in terms of how the board may play out in the first round. Should give you guys some insight into how Joe Shane may be able to navigate the board, how he may approach his draft choice when the time comes, if the board stays this way. So, as it currently stands, we're using a mock where the Giants are drafting 7th. That's where they stand right now. So, without any further ado, do you want to get into this, Monty?
Yeah, let's get into it. We thought 32 would be a good one because we kind of get to readdress all these guys that we talked about. Some guys we talked about like basically August. We were talking about them, so kind of give a little bit more idea where we see them today. So I'm gonna pull it up. We're using the PFF mock draft simulator, so we're gonna take turns talk, kind of announcing the pick and giving you our explanation of the guy. But with the first pick, do you think there's much discussion here? For everybody knows, me and Sal did this beforehand, so we can kind of go this a little bit quicker and talk to her and do. Was there any thought for you between obviously it's Caleb Williams or Drake May for the Bears at pick 1? Do you think that there's any real discussion on who they should take?
Not on who they should take. I think there's going to be discussion when the time comes on who they will take. I don't think it's a slam dunk by any means. But I think that right now the consensus is very clearly that the clear number one in this class is clearly Caleb Williams. So I think that there is really not much controversy here. I do think with the first overall pick, the Chicago Bears will select Caleb Williams, quarterback from USC.
Yep, I agree. We'll pull up his draft profile here for anybody who's watching. It's right there, but I'll kind of go over a few of these. On the year so far, he has a 90.3 PFF grade, 3,647 yards, 30 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Having a really good year. Kind of had a better year this year, but still just of the elite. He struggled a little bit under pressure this year with a pressure grade of 39.3. But I mean, he's just a special, like elite type quarterback. And I agree with you. I don't think that there's much of a debate here. I think the first pick should be Caleb Williams. We'll see if that's what they end up doing. So I'm gonna go ahead and select that there. So the first pick in our mock draft, pick Caleb Williams at USC, 6'1", 215 pounds. He's a true junior. He was a 5-star recruit, 2022 Heisman Trophy winner, and a transfer from Oklahoma. So now the second pick, the Patriots are on the clock.
Yeah. So as it currently stands, the Patriots do have the number 2 overall pick. And how do you want to do this? You want me to announce these, or do you want to announce them and we'll and go alternating through these?
Sure, I can just announce them if you want. So
Well, we'll alternate. Why don't you announce this one? So with the Patriots.
sure. So with the second pick, I don't think there's really any discussion here. With the first, at least there's a little bit. I don't think there's any. Patriots have a huge quarterback problem as we're watching as we record this, a humongous quarterback problem. So with the second pick in our mock draft, we will be selecting Drake May, University of North Carolina, one of the best quarterbacks in this draft. Um, He really is a special big arm talent. You know, he has that Justin Herbert type mold to him. 6'4", 230 pounds. He's a third year player out of North Carolina, 5-star, former basketball player, big time sports family. His brother played in North Carolina. So really, really good player. Do you have anything you want to add on Drake May?
No, I mean he's had a great year. I think it's pretty clear that these guys were 1 and 2 coming into the season. I think it's largely stayed that way. There have been arguments about who should go 1, who should go 2. There have been arguments that maybe one of them should drop. I think all that stuff will continue and play out. But at the end of the day, these are 2 top-tier quarterback prospects, as we've talked about all season. These guys are a notch above an otherwise very good quarterback class to begin with. A lot of quarterback needy teams. Certainly, these 2 teams at the top of the draft. I just cannot see these 2 teams passing up on quarterback. So I agree. Caleb would go 1 to the Bears, and I think Drake would go 2 to the Pats. There's no way the Pats can pass up on a quarterback, except if it's Bailey Zappi season. He has a chance here to earn his future. No, he's not. They're not going to pass up on quarterback. If they've got the second overall pick, they're taking whichever quarterback is left. Almost certainly it would be Drake May. I mean, I know the Pats have done crazier things in the past, and I've heard people say, "Oh, I can see them doing something insane." That's assuming that Bill Belichick is still in charge and he's doing things his way. And I think if things play out the way they're playing out, which is where they do land with the second overall pick, and they have a 2-3 win season at tops, I think there's a pretty decent chance that this is Bill Belichick's last ride as coach of the Patriots. But even if it isn't, I can't see them passing up on quarterback here. I don't think there's much else to say here. He's a building block quarterback. At this point, you got to take the guy.
Yeah, I mean, just very, very special quarterback prospect. Would have been the top pick in a lot of drafts, just not this one because you have a even more special quarterback in Caleb Williams. But yeah, I think you nailed that. We're not doing any trades in this mock draft for the record, but I don't think either of these 2 would have traded out even if we were.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it is. We should probably talk a little bit about the way we're approaching this draft. So we did do this a little earlier. We wanted to have time to discuss as the picks get more interesting, but there will be no trades because I think when people start doing trades, it gets a little funky because these, they base it on these mock draft simulators that I think sometimes have unrealistic trade value propositions. And it's very hard to predict these things. So I think it's important to just think of this exercise as a way to say, if the board is the way it is today, what do these teams need and how would they approach the board based on best player available, their needs, et cetera. So that's how we're going to go about it. So I think the first 2 picks are the quarterbacks. That now things start to get a little bit interesting to some extent. Not too controversial, but the third overall pick is the Arizona Cardinals. And I'll just go ahead and announce this one, and I don't think it's any surprise here, but the Arizona Cardinals, they were for the big part of the season thought to be a team that might take a quarterback, but Kyler Murray has come back and looked really good. And I think the consensus at this point is the Cardinals are probably not going to take a quarterback. They're going to try to build around Kyler. They have some extra picks to play with. So I do think that the Cardinals are going to take the best player available here, who is clearly Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver out of Ohio State, pound for pound, potentially the best player in this draft. If you take away the positional value of quarterback, Marvin Harrison Jr., we've talked about him before. He's a special prospect. We believe he might be one of a handful of generational prospects in this class. It's amazing that there's more than one, but 6'4", 205 pounds. He's a true junior. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. The son of Marvin Harrison, the Hall of Fame wide receiver from the Colts. Freakish athleticism and speed. Will probably run a 4.3. Been clocked as fast as 23.5 miles per hour. Has insane short shuttle times and broad jump. He's strong as hell for a wide receiver. 20 reps on the bench at 225. Incredible body control, incredible route runner, great hands. I mean, he's just sort of the perfect wide receiver prospect, probably the best prospect at wide receiver since at least AJ Green. So this is sort of a no-brainer. If you're locked in at quarterback and you've got the 3rd overall pick, you take Marvin Harrison Jr. If you're not locked in at quarterback and you have the 3rd overall pick, you might still take Marvin Harrison Jr. because he's that good. So
yeah,
with the Cardinals, I think this is an easy one.
Yeah, man. I'm right with you. There was zero hesitation in my mind what they were going to do here. We've talked about it before. I think the third pick is likely going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. no matter who's picking there. Unless there's something weird that happens with the first two picks, I don't think Marvin Harrison Jr. is falling on the top three. He's just that type of special prospect. He plays a premium position, not quarterback premium, but pretty damn premium. Wide receivers are, one of the highest paid positions in the NFL for a reason. He's a very special player. So far this year, 1,211 passing yards or receiving yards, 14 receiving touchdowns on 67 receptions. He's averaging 3.44 yards per route run, which is an incredibly high number. That's very special. And that's like a number that you should keep track of, the yards per route run.
Yet it's only the second best in this class.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
This is a special class, man.
It's a really good class. You mentioned AJ Green. I think that's somebody who I mentioned in the wide receiver episode. That was somebody who I saw as a player comp, but I think this year he's really just kind of like he's making AJ Green like not look like a good comp for him because he's so special. And AJ Green was special in his own right.
Mm-hmm.
There was a comp that Brugler used, which I really liked, which I think really fits here with Marvin Harrison Jr. going to the Cardinals. He used Larry Fitzgerald, and he said more like of a lean Larry Fitzgerald. He's obviously a thinner player, but I really liked how he phrased it. The reason he said it is because there are athletic freaks we've seen at wide receiver, and whether we've seen like technicians at wide receivers that are more like traditional size, but there's very few that are both. And he said Larry Fitzgerald was both. Larry Fitzgerald was a total technician and like great hands, all of that stuff at the wide receiver position. But he was also a freak size speed guy. That's what Marvin Harrison Jr. is. He is both those things. It's just hard to come by. So 20 years later, history kind of repeats itself here, I think, if the Cardinals get Marvin Harrison Jr.
All right. I think those first three picks are fairly locked in. We don't know who the teams will be, but I think in some way, shape, or form, we firmly believe that picks 1, 2, and 3 will be Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Maybe not exactly in that order, but probably those three guys. I think that's fair to say. And for any team who may not want one of these guys, if you're sitting at the third pick, it's important to know, like, while we're not doing trades, these are blue chip prospects. And if a team is looking to trade out of any one of these picks, they are going to get a king's ransom, including for Marvin Harrison Jr. at the third overall pick. So it's important to see who lands where. But I think these three guys, no matter who's there initially on the board, it's likely that even if those teams trade out of it, these three guys go 1, 2, 3 in some order. I think that's highly probable.
Yeah, and that's going to be the interesting part. If the Giants end up in the top 3, and I know a lot of us want quarterback, and I'll still be rooting for it, but I mean, I think you got to be rooting for a trade or take Marvin Harrison Jr. if you're in that third spot, because that's just how you maximize your value in this draft, and that's going to be an interesting discussion if that comes. But regardless, let's go ahead and move on to the next pick. We have the Washington Commanders.
Do not start celebrating. Do not start. Don't do it. Don't tweet anything.
I'm not. I didn't say anything. I was really glad there was no pass interference there. That's all I'm saying, because I was scared.
Just leave it alone. Leave it alone. So, all right, where are we? Number 4. You want to handle the Commanders here?
Yeah, but first I want to talk about, because this is one we were still kind of doing over text, and both of us pretty quickly went to one player. But you look at the needs here. You see tight end, O-line, and edge. Those are the top 3 needs, and then you see as the top 4 players available: Oluf Fashanu, tackle; Brock Bowers, tight end; Letu Latu, edge; Joel, tackle. So the top 3 needs are the top 4 players on the board. So you really could make a case for any one of these guys.
Yeah.
Would you make a case for anybody other than the guy we picked here, or are you pretty set on it?
So I think this comes down to, this is a perfect place where need meets the best players on the board, but you can't ignore positional value. And we've talked about this, where I think you can make a strong case that Brock Bowers is the best player left on the board when the top 3 guys are gone. I think you make a very strong case that he's the best player I think much like Marvin Harrison Jr., you can view Brock Bowers as a generational type prospect for his position. The issue is his position.
Yeah.
To take a tight end this high, fourth overall, you would have to. I think this. Where did Kyle Pitts go? Fourth overall.
Yeah.
You see what's going on. I'm not saying he
That was
would
the
be
highest
Kyle
pick
Pitts,
tight end ever.
right? The pressure is so immense for a tight end at this position that to meet the value, or at least perceived value, of taking one here, the guy has to play like a Hall of Famer. It's an insane place. Now, I think Brock Bowers is probably good enough where he might put up like an incredible NFL career because he's so damn talented. That said, though, I think that there's nothing more important than offensive line. While tight end is a need for the Commanders, it's pretty clear their tackles are a problem. They need that. Offensive tackle is far more valuable from a positional value standpoint. So I'm taking Brock Bowers off the board for them as much as he's a good player. You're down to the other two guys, and this sort of comes down to who your preference is. This is going to come out now. We don't know who the coaching staff's going to be. We don't know who. We really don't know what's going to be going on with the Commanders. But I think you can't really go wrong with Fashanu and Fashanu and Joel, the two top tackles in this class. But I think we went ahead and picked the guy who's the consensus, the better of the two, at least as a prospect. So we went ahead and selected Olu Fashanu here, and the Olu Fashanu is the tackle from Penn State to the Commanders. But Monty, why don't you tell us a little bit about Olu Fashanu to just refresh our listeners about who this guy is and why he should go so high?
Sure. So Olu Fashanu was our number one offensive tackle when we did our tackle preview. He's 6'6", 320 pounds out of Penn State. He's a fourth-year player. He actually could have declared last year, and he probably would have been a top 5 pick if he did. He was a 3-star recruit, and this guy is, a Feldman freak. This is, a truly special player, truly special athlete. He runs a 4.97 40, a 4.63 shuttle. He benches 405 pounds. He squats is 605 pounds. He cleans 350 pounds. He's a very, very special pass blocker. Is 88.4 pass blocking grade, 81.1 true pass set. Honestly, anybody who's looking at his stats here, they don't really pop off the page. He's a 78.8, but PFF really isn't doing him justice. This guy is as good of any offensive tackle prospect we've had since Penny Sewell, probably, in my opinion. He is a very, very good offensive tackle. You really cannot go wrong with this pick, and he will help set up that Washington offensive line for the next decade. We might be looking at the NFC's taking over with offensive tackles again, except we'll have one of the All-Pros for once, unlike last time. We were the only team without one. But, Olu Fashanu here. Do you have anything else on him?
No, he's the best tackle in the class. I think you take him as a prospect. You run with him.
One thing I wanted to say before we totally moved on, obviously we took Olu Fashanu. I agree with you, Brock Bowers. The one thing we've said is, a tight end can be like a very valuable position, but you got to have like top 3. There's no room for error. If you have the number 6 best tight end in the NFL, it's not worth the pick. He has to be like the best, or it's a miss. And then
you really have to be kind of on a Hall of Fame trajectory to be valuable at this point as a tight end. It's a lot of pressure for that pick. And you're talking about teams that are drafting here. They're a team that's rebuilding, new ownership, probably new coaching staff. I can't see it. I can't see them building their premier pick around Brock Bowers.
I don't disagree with you, but you saw a team like the Falcons fall in love with Kyle Pitts. All it takes is falling in love with a special player like that. And the other one we'll mention, obviously these guys will take him. We'll talk more about him. Is Latu Latu. I think in a lot of classes, this guy would be talked about going this high, but he has some injury histories that we'll go into. So I think that kind of takes him off your board here. So again, taking Olu Fashanu here at 4 to Washington. So
I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's swing
5,
around to
Chicago Bears.
Yeah. Take us to the Bears, man. This is their own pick here at 5. So why don't you want to handle this one?
Sure. So number 5 here, there's still some really good players on the board. The ones we talked about already, it's Brock Bowers, there's Latu Latu, there's Joe Alt, And then there's also the top wide receiver left in Malik Nabers or Roma Dunze. Those some other really high end players. And if you're looking at the Bears' top needs here, it's QB, wide receiver, center, D line, cornerback. I know when we talked about this, we were considering the idea of Joe Alt here, but further review, we dove in, and the Bears have gotten really good tackle play this year.
They've got good O-line play, period.
Yeah. Which is really kind of an indictment on Justin Fields because he's been getting sacked a lot despite how well that offensive line seems to be playing. So we ended up moving off of offensive line. And we went with the player we think is the best wide receiver left in this draft. And in my opinion, would have been the top wide receiver in the last 2 draft class. And, with the 5th pick here, we took Malik Nabers out of LSU, a 6 foot, 200-pound wide receiver, true junior, and was a 4-star recruit. You want to talk a little bit about Malik Nabers?
Yeah, Malik Nabers is awesome, man. In any other class, Malik Nabers is easily wide receiver 1 and being discussed along the likes of some of the premier wide receivers to come out in recent draft classes. This is a special, special player. The only reason he's not getting as much hype is because he just happens to be in a class with Marvin Harrison Jr. That is it. But Malik Nabers is a special wide receiver. And, when we did our summer preview of our top rankings, and wide receiver was our first episode, we had Nabers ranked as wide receiver 2 going in. And I remember he was already viewed as very high. I think we talked about him and discussed a lot of things about his game that we liked, how explosive he was, how would speed up through the catch point. Talked about how he had to kind of maybe tighten up some of his route running, but there wasn't little things, right? It was not major, but he was already very good. He got better at everything throughout the year. And that whole LSU offense was dynamic, led by Jayden Daniels. But Malik Nabers was probably the prime piece. We went back and watched a decent amount of LSU film recently. We'll get to that. But Malik Nabers stands out. You watch LSU film, Malik Nabers stands out on every single play. The dude is always open. I mean, I remember commenting on that when we watched some of these games. It just looks like he's open on every play. He finds a way, and it gets to the point where teams are bracketing him, double teaming, triple teaming. I mean, it was insane. I remember the game against against Alabama. They were bracketing him for almost every play. There's so much respect defenses show to this guy, and he still produces. You talked about the one key. I don't want to go through every step. His grades are off the chart, but the one key stat, the yards per route run. Let's go over it again. Where was Marvin Harrison at 3.4 yards, 3.5 yards, something like that?
I'll double check for it, but you talk it up and I'll look up for us.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about how over 3 yards is outstanding. It's really excellent. 3 yards per route run. Malik Nabers this year, 3.81 yards per route run. That is all-time high. I'm not even sure there's a higher number out there in modern history.
There is a couple. I think Devontae Smith was in the 4s, but it's very, very rare. And now the Heisman season.
Right. I mean, we're talking, these are elite traits. This guy, when you watch him on film, he just knows how to get open. He's really running. He's not a perfect route runner yet. Rounds out his routes a little bit, but he's become just a really great route runner. Line him up inside, line him up outside, fits any offense. He's really the perfect modern NFL wide receiver.
He's the prototype nowadays.
He is the prototype. He doesn't drop the ball. He wins contested catches. He gets separation. He can win on the inside, win on the outside. He's fast. He's quick. He's explosive. This guy's got a whole package. So for the Bears, let's circle back. The Bears here they just took their quarterback in in Caleb Williams. Here, they have a chance to add really what I think is the best player available. You can make arguments that it's Brock Bowers or it's Joe Alt, but like we said, the line is actually doing okay. They just invested a first-round pick last year, the 10th overall pick on their right tackle, Darnell Wright. They're getting decent play out of their left tackle, Jones. They do need some interior line help, but going tackle again this year doesn't make sense when you got a dynamic player like this. Think about the offense you're now setting up. You have Caleb Williams that you've just drafted in this class. You have DJ Moore, who you got in the trade last year, who's having a good season, and he's a very good wide receiver. And now you add to that Malik Nabers. You've also got Cole Kmet, who's a very good tight end. You've got the makings of a dynamic offense now, an offense that has immense potential. So here, I think to me, this is sort of a, we went back and forth, but I think at the end of the day, this is a very strong pick for the Bears. You run up with the card, you take Malik Nabers, and your offense is set for a while.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot of good wide receivers in the class, and we'll talk about it. But for me, Malik Nabers is the clear wide receiver too. He's a special player. I actually looked it up. So Marvin Harrison's yards per route run were 3.44. And yes,
Okay.
it's 3.81 from Malik Nabers. That's
Insane.
insane. And one thing, you mentioned all of those traits that like you benched off a ton of them that he's great at. One that you didn't even mention, this dude is incredible after the catch. He
Yeah.
is phenomenal after the catch. They have this guy running like jet sweeps and they have him throw it to him. There was a play we were watching versus Florida where he just catches like a little curl route and breaks a tackle and takes it like 40 yards. This guy is a special player. Going
That,
just go
it's
ahead.
worth discussing that play, because that play, that ball's thrown behind him. And he reaches behind and makes an incredible catch behind him, and he turns his body with the momentum of the football and almost just like in stride, even though he had to stop his momentum, turns and switches gear, and he shoots down the seam for like 30 yards. And it just, you thought like it was an incomplete pass. Next thing you know, Malik Nabers got like a 40-yard gain. His
Yeah,
body control is incredible.
I was watching that, and fun fact, because I was watching it to watch Jayden Daniels. So, like, once I saw the result of the play, I saw it was caught. I kind of looked away because it was just like a short curl. All of a sudden, I went to go like write a note down. I looked up; he's still running down the field. I'm like, what happened here? Like, so yeah, he's a freak. Just for anybody who's listening, he's a 93 PFF grade, which is incredibly high. 1,545 passing yards, insane. 86 receptions and 14 receiving touchdowns. Just crazy numbers.
Yeah.
Some of the best in the country. Plays inside, outside. Fantastic player. I think. And lastly, one thing to say too, when we did our wide receiver episode, funny enough, we comped Malik Nabers to DJ Moore, and now he's teaming up with DJ Moore in Chicago. I think those two would be a great match together. I think it's a great pick.
Absolute hell for defenses to try to cover those guys together. Unbelievable. Like, the Bears are in good position here to really set up their offense. Let's
Anything
go on
else?
to number 6. No, let's get through this, man. We got a bunch of picks to go through, and I think it's going to get interesting the further we go, because now you got to play the board. But number 6 is the Jets, and I'll announce the pick. Why don't you tell us about the guy? But the Jets, their needs here are interesting. You could make an argument that they need a quarterback because Zach Wilson is basically done. Although he's starting again this week, I guess, but he looks like he's done in the NFL for the most part. Aaron Rodgers is going to be back next year, and obviously he's the starter as long as he's healthy. But they don't really have a succession plan behind him, and you can argue that, hey, you're drafting in the top 10 here in a strong class. You may want to take a swing at a quarterback, so that's a consideration. But the reality is the Jets gave up assets to make a run at it with Aaron Rodgers, and they have glaring needs. Their big ones are wide receiver, tackle, and defensive. And you can argue defensive line because they're going to lose some guys in free agency potentially. Although I think they're pretty good there. So let's just hone it down to wide receiver and tackle. You could definitely make an argument for a wide receiver here, but you just saw Malik Nabers go off the board. And I think if he's here, if Malik Nabers falls to the Jets at 6, I think it makes for a very interesting conversation.
Great fit for them.
Right. I mean, I think the idea of Aaron Rodgers throwing to Malik Nabers and Garrett Wilson would be something that would be very enticing. But I think here they take what really is one of the best players available, and they lock down their line here, and they take Joe Alt, the best remaining offensive tackle on the board from Notre Dame. So I'll give you a quick insight into Joe Alt. For those who don't know, he is the consensus number 2 overall tackle in the class. He's 6'8", big dude, 6'8", 317. He was a 4-star recruit. He's a true third-year player, just dominant all year. You can tell us a little bit more about him if you want to just refresh people on who this guy is and what kind of player he is.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's a monster of a player, and he is a guy who was a really good player last year. I mean, a 91.4 PFF grade in 2022, and repeated again 91 with a 91 this year. But he just looks like a better player despite the numbers being the same. He just looks more polished. He's really stepped up as a pass blocker this year. I mean, he has a 92.2 pass blocking grade this year. He's allowed one sack and only 2 hits and 2 hurries, but he's a really, really good player, man. He's a giant. He can block in the run game. There's not much to not like about Joe Alt. He's not quite the athlete Fashanu is, and I think that ultimately makes him offensive tackle too. I think they are similar level college linemen, but for projectability standpoints, Fashanu projects a little bit better from his athletic standpoint. But Joe Alt again would be like a top 5 to 10 pick in any single draft class. He is a blue chip player, and he is anybody who's watching, you see all these numbers are off the chart here, and he's somebody who would be a great fit for the New York Jets, who desperately need to protect their quarterback coming off of Achilles injury. That was the one thing I was worried about the Jets going into the season. I didn't expect an injury like that for Aaron Rodgers, but I was worried about their ability to protect him. And now they have their chance to do it going into next year. I think this is a no-brainer.
Yeah, and to be fair, like as bad as the Jets O line is, like they're probably one big piece away from it really taking form. I think the word is that they expect Elijah Vera Tucker to shift over to tackle next year, maybe play right tackle. They just drafted Joe Tippmann, and he was looking decent before he got hurt, the center from Wisconsin. So, I think you get another left tackle in here who they can trust, who can lock down the blind side. You have the makings of a line that was bad suddenly looking good. They already gave that deal to Lakin Tomlinson. I mean, I think they're setting themselves up to have at least a functional to good offensive line. That's kind of all you need. Aaron Rodgers does the rest. So I think that's a pretty strong pick for the Jets here.
I'll also say for picking like what we think will happen, this is a Joe Douglas pick. Joe Douglas loves picking the trenches. He's a Philadelphia, Baltimore guy. That's what he does. Every single year, that's where he prefers the pick. So I think he'll love Joe Alt. There's a lot. He apparently was big on Aquanu. I think he finally gets his offensive line.
All right. Let's move on to the 7th pick in the draft as it currently it's constituted, and the pick belongs to your New York Football Giants. I'll read off the needs.
With the Patriots win here.
The Patriots did win a game, so don't kill us for this draft order being screwed up. We did this in real time before this, so we're sorry, but just suck it up. It's an exercise. Just deal with it. So, all right, Monty, here we are. You and everybody who has listened to our pod, who has heard our rants on Twitter Spaces, who has been fighting you on the timeline through your chaotic behavior for months while I try to keep the peace. Everybody.
Okay, buddy.
Everybody knows where we stand on this. The New York Giants, this is my saying, right? This is my line. Everybody likes it. The New York Giants continue to have a first-round quarterback problem, or a day 1 quarterback problem. Here they are, pick 7. They've missed out on the top 2 quarterbacks. They couldn't get up. There are still some good players on the board. The Giants kind of need everything because they don't have the best roster in the world. They obviously need help in the offensive line. Obviously need help in the wide receiver room. Obviously could use a defensive lineman to help replace the loss of Leonard Williams. Obviously could use an edge rusher. They could use a linebacker. They can use a cornerback. I will say, for the defensive players, it's a little trickier here predicting because we don't know who the Giants' defensive coordinator is going to be, so that's going to affect how they approach this. So that is a little tricky, but they kind of need everything. But at the end of the day, what they need more than anything as has been on full display this year is an improvement in the quarterback room. And we have made the argument that you don't have to hit a home run. You don't have to hit an all-time grand slam on quarterback and be afraid of not hitting a home run, therefore not taking a quarterback. the quarterback room should be viewed as every other position group. When you have a chance to improve it, you should take a swing and improve it. In general, that means taking a first round swing. It is hard to find high quality quarterbacks that you're going to improve your room with in the second round. It can be done. It happens. Jalen Hurts was a second round pick. Obviously, guys like Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott were taken later in the draft. But in general, you got to take a first round pick swing at quarterback. So, Monty, are we taking a quarterback at pick 7 here for the New York Giants?
We are. And one thing I'll say, like another thing to look at here, I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is gone. You have both the blue chip tackle prospects gone. Even your wide receiver 2 is gone. And I love Rome Odunze, and if we weren't going quarterback, maybe that might be where I'm looking. But like at this point, we're looking at the third wide receiver off the board. Like you mentioned, we have a quarterback problem. So let's open up the quarterbacks here. Trevor Sickman loves Bo Nix. That's not who we're taking. So just ignore him being the top of the board here. That's Trevor Sickman's guy. But me and you have been pounding the drum of JJ McCarthy. That's a guy you and I are both very high on and are higher than others on. You look at his stats here, 90.7 PFF grade. He has a 6.1 big time throw rate to a 3.0 turnover worthy play. He's, really solid grades all around. And importantly, he's a 20-year-old projectable quarterback with a big arm, and a lot of athleticism. That was somebody who we obviously considered here, right? The other guy that we were picking between is Jayden Daniels out of LSU. Jayden Daniels.
We should mention, for the purpose of this pick, we did kind of assume that Shedeur Sanders is not going to be declaring, just to be clear, because while he's still we've said while he's declaring until he's not, we're getting pretty close to like declaration time, and it's sure sounding like from reports coming out of Colorado that he is going back to school. So we should make that clear, because I think it would be worth saying that if he's on the board here, he's a strong candidate for QB3 in this class.
Yeah, I mean, he was QB3 in our quarterback episode, and he definitely has a strong case. But yeah, I mean, they just got the number 1 offensive tackle in the draft class. We keep hearing Shedeur Sanders going back, and he also had a back injury. So even if he does declare at this point, I think that's where we kind of just drew it, is like, even if he does declare, that back injury could be something that pushes him out of the first round in general. So yeah, we decided to leave him out of discussions. So for us, the discussion came down to be between JJ McCarthy, we just talked about, and then Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels has been getting a lot of hype, Sal. That guy, and from some really in know people, some people who are very good at this. I know Brugler just put Jayden Daniels number 7 in his recent mock draft to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, showing that he's worthy of going this high in his eyes. I'm blanking on the name, but there's another guy from The Athletic who's a former GM, and he was actually put Jayden Daniels as his quarterback 2 above Drake May, which was a shock to me.
Yeah.
There is some talk of that, and I get it. Like Jayden Daniels is most likely going to win the Heisman. He has some of the best Heisman numbers we've seen. He's no doubt been productive. I mean, he has the most explosive plays in the country with both his arms and with his legs. He has a 79.9 adjusted completion percentage, 8.4, just 4th in the country, big time throw rate, to an only 1.6 turnover worthy play rate. He's a 99.1 deep grade. One of the best deep ball passer in the entire country. He is a very, very special college quarterback. So those two, between our guy and the guy that's kind of been the late riser we're choosing, why don't you tell them which way we went with this, Sal?
So I should make a note. We're going with what we think the Giants would probably do, or the teams in general would do at this point with the knowledge we have on whatever today is, December, whatever the hell it is. Sorry, I'm never good with what day it is, but you know, at this point in time, I think it's pretty clear that the NFL consensus, and I'm saying that based on what people like Dane Brugler say, because he doesn't just speak on his own. He generally he's trying to reflect what he's hearing from scouts and his own personal view also. Um, I think it's pretty clear that right now in this class, Jayden Daniels is quarterback 3. And if you believe the Giants have a day one quarterback problem, which we firmly believe, and you don't think that there's any prospect worth missing the quarterback on here, pick 7, I think that's an easy case to make. Then you go with quarterback 3, and if you think he's going to be somebody you can plug into your system and work with and turn him into a winner, the pick here right now for the New York Giants at number 7 is Jayden Daniels from LSU, quarterback. Now, would I be upset if the Giants took Jayden Daniels 7th overall? No, because at the end of the day, it would show commitment in actually turning this thing over, and getting their quarterback, their young quarterback that they can develop. And clearly, as you mentioned, he's a very, very talented young man.
Yep.
He has elite traits that I think teams do tend to drool over. And the 2 big elite traits are obviously number 1, he is an outstanding runner. And I mean outstanding runner. When you watch his tape, which we were fortunate enough to get our hands on finally, some of his coaching tape from this year, you can see when he takes off, he has really outstanding field vision. From the pocket, he can kind of sense when that gap opens up. He takes it and he just keeps accelerating. He's very elusive. He doesn't really break tackles physically, but he gets around guys. They can't catch him. And he's just a really athletic runner. Once he's going, it looks like he has multiple gears he can shift into. And he'll take what looks like a broken play and maybe a loss, a sack in the backfield, and turn it into like a 60-yard run. I mean, he does that pretty routinely. So that's a really incredible trait. Not a lot of guys can do what he does with his legs. So that right there, in my opinion, sets his floor very, very high as a playmaker. Because at minimum, you know that if the play breaks down, this is a guy who can create with his legs, move the chains, and that's that. As a passer, he has one feature that is really outstanding, and that is his deep pass. Specifically the touch on his deep pass, which is really, it's remarkable when you watch it. Like when he's throwing that deep pass, he throws with anticipation. He throws his guys open. He throws it with perfect ball placement. He drops teardrops right into their hands in stride, 40 yards down the field. Like it's a beautiful thing to watch. So those 2 things he does in a remarkable way. He runs really fast, and in the pocket, he throws the deep ball probably better than anybody in this class right now. He does that remarkably well. Where I struggle to get on the hype train with Jayden Daniels that everybody else is on is kind of everything else about his passing game. And I know Obed is going to send me death threats over this, but Walt is going to shake his head looking at me like this because I know you guys love him. We did watch his game tape, and I think you and I both came down with the same conclusion that the things I mentioned he does outstanding. There are things that I was concerned about going into my evaluation that did not change after watching some of the game tape of his best games. The games where he really put himself on the map, like the Florida game.
We watched tapes earlier this season, but the last 4 games he really took off, and we wanted to get those games, and we got a hold of them. We're hoping it would change stuff, but go ahead.
Instead of criticizing him, I think we're doing a pros and cons. I mentioned the pros, which are really high floor pros, right? If you have a quarterback who is a natural pocket passer, who likes to live in the pocket because he's looking for the home run, and he knows how to hit the home run with efficiency and throw guys open, that's a big, big, big plus, right? That's his calling card as a passer. And if the play breaks down, he can take off, and he's so damn good as a runner that he's going to get first downs consistently with his legs. That's another big plus. Those are 2 elite traits that right there, the floor is high for this kid. The floor for Jayden Daniels is a mid-tier NFL quarterback, in my opinion.
He's a very nice ball, because another thing you build off what you're saying, he has incredible pocket presence. I mean, he
senses pressure very well. Yeah.
He senses it well. He moves around the pocket well. He has a great internal clock. And once he feels the pressure or feels that he's been sitting in the pocket too long, he takes off and he runs. And he does a really good job at that.
Now let's go through the cons. I've maintained that I wonder if Jayden Daniels has an elite NFL arm, and what I mean by that is a guy who can really throw the ball in tight windows with high velocity. Which these windows in the NFL close a lot quicker than they do in college. Guys are not wide open. I mentioned, Malik Nabers is always open. He's really always open. Like when you watch him, he gets himself open. It helps, and that's not a knock on Daniels, but it's hard to project that happening in the NFL where when you go up against much better defenses and higher caliber athletes. He has a good pass. He has, I would say, good velocity, but he doesn't have great velocity. I think you see a little bit of Bo Nix type velocity on his throws, where when he's throwing outside the numbers, when he's throwing that intermediate area, you see the nose of the ball kind of dip down a little. You see the ball die a little bit on those throws. He doesn't like throw it like he's throwing a heater into a tight window, as it like on like a frozen rope. I guess that's nitpicking, but it's something I pay attention to because I'm trying to imagine that throw against NFL DBs and linebackers closing on you. The other criticism I have of Jayden Daniels is, and I think you saw this also, while a lot of his explosive plays on the ground are really, really incredible to watch, when you see the highlight reel, it's insane. On many of those same plays, he's got receivers wide open underneath. And I don't mean just like checkdowns. I mean guys over the middle of the field, like explosive pass plays available to him, deep, intermediate. And he either just doesn't see them or he doesn't choose them, and he'll choose his legs. It's hard for me to say which it is. Is it a processing issue where he's just not getting through the progressions quickly enough? Is it that he just doesn't have the field vision? He doesn't spot them. It's hard to see because he's like 6'4". I mean, he's towering over everybody. But he's instinctively somebody who I think tends to lock on the home run he wants to hit. And if he doesn't have the home run, he's looking to run. And I think that is a criticism of him because I don't know if that's going to work in the NFL. You want the guy to have the ability to find those open receivers who are NFL open and, over the middle on crossers. And he's good. He's not great there. And he does miss a lot of open receivers. I mean, I think it's glaring how often you see him turn down those throws to run instead. They don't end up being negative plays because when he runs for like 20, 30 yards in college. But can you afford to do that in the NFL and still get positive plays is the question.
Sure. So for mine is that I'm actually not as worried about his arm, like outside the numbers and things like that. I think it's better in Knicks, but I don't think it's like special by any means. I think it's just like a good enough type arm.
I agree. It's good. I didn't say it's bad. I think it's a good NFL arm.
He can make every throw, I think.
Yes. I think that's a fair way to describe him.
But it doesn't mean that he can make every throw with like at a high level. My issue too is that I think he kind of understands that this is like a positive and a negative. He kind of understands that his best throw is like a touch pass. And I watch games, especially that Florida game. He throws all touch passes. It's like 95% touch passes. Like he has options where he can try to drive a ball in there and you'll throw it to the place with a touch pass. You'll get down to the 5-yard line. He's just throwing goal line fades. Like I think that that's a strength in his game. And I think it's something he can do in the NFL. But as a fan, I don't think I want to live and die by fades and touch passes. I think I would want to have, a quarterback who's more willing to drive the ball. And maybe that will change in the league. But that's just what I'm seeing here. I agree with you on the processing. There's another play versus Alabama where not only running, but he had a guy wide open and who broke from the same spot as the other wide receiver. And he threw it to the wide receiver that was in like double coverage with also a safety underneath instead of a wide open wide receiver who broke to the left side.
Right. I mean, on that play, it was I think it was Kieran Lacy who was lined up in the slot, and I think Malik Nabers was lined up just outside him. They broke, and Nabers is, as I mentioned, he's often bracketed and in double coverage, and he's just running straight down the field with a DB carrying him from underneath and just the deep safety just staring at him the whole time and over the top on him, and another cornerback carrying another receiver pretty close by in proximity. So really 3 DBs in the area. And while this is happening, Lacey's running wide open over the middle of the field, right in front of where Jayden Daniels is looking, with nothing but green grass in front of him.
Yep.
And Daniels turns it down and goes and shoots the ball into essentially triple coverage.
Yep.
To
So
Nabers. I mean,
so between like a pass, like plays like that, and what you talked about with like where he passes up open guys for running lanes and things like that, those worry me from his processing. I see him processing at a half field often. That stuff worries me, especially for a 5th-year starter. Um, I'll say another thing I don't love is that although he's a great runner, he does not run to pass. He almost never runs to pass. Once he runs, he's taking off. He never, and I mean never, runs out of the pocket, rolls out and passes. I think I saw it once through all the games we watched. When he runs, and I also worry a little bit about his running with his slight frame in the NFL. But yeah,
yeah,
man.
and we're nitpicking on, and I
Yeah.
think the part of the reason we're nitpicking is because I think there's a very realistic chance that Jayden Daniels is the pick the Giants make
Yeah.
because he's so good. I mean, let's be real. He's a really really good quarterback prospect, and all credit to the kid. He's worked his way up to this point where he's being viewed as a top 10 player. Top 10 players get critiqued. You have to, especially a
Yep.
quarterback, you got to go through the pros and cons. So we're going through them. I think he's high floor. I think there are things he needs to work on in his game, and he has to be coached up. And if the Giants take him, and Brian Dable and whoever is our OC at that time says I can work with this kid and develop him fully, so that all the things that maybe we're pointing out, they see and say we can work on this. This is minor. I think you have the makings of a really good quarterback, and so there is some projection here. Um, but I think it's a solid pick. I think to me, this would signal the Giants are moving on from the Daniel Jones era, that they're ready to reset and commit to the rebuild, and they're taking their swing at quarterback, which is an intelligent thing to do. So
Yep.
I think that's that for that pick. Is there? I mean, we went through it in great detail, but I think we should get through the rest of these picks on this mock. What do you think?
Yeah. The last thing I just wanted to say, I just wanted to agree with you there. Like, I think Dable would be a very good quarterback, coach to coach this quarterback. And, as much as you and I have our doubts, and really it's more that we've dove into Jayden Daniels more than any other prospect. So we have a lot of opinions both ways about him. That a lot of people who know what they're talking about like Jayden Daniels. And even if he ends up a little bit lower for you or I, if a lot of experts like him, that matters. And I'm okay being the outlier and still cheering on the Jayden Daniels pick, because there's people who are smarter than me and you that like it. And a lot of people miss, whether it's me or an expert or whoever. And it's hard to know for sure on these guys. So just, if they have conviction in a guy, I'll be rooting for it no matter who it is.
100%. All
All
right,
right.
we
Yeah,
got to
let's
get
get
through
to
the
the
rest
rest
of
of
these
these.
picks.
Yeah,
All right,
that was the important one.
that's the one you guys tuned in for. So we wanted to give you what we thought. Um, he may not be the guy that Monty and I love the most for the Giants to take outside of the top two, but I think he's a very reasonable guy, and I would be on board rooting for this kid. I would get his jersey the next morning if the Giants took him. All right, number 8, the Tennessee Titans. They need wide receiver, they need O line help, they need a DB, they need everything, but they don't need a quarterback right now. They took
Nope.
they took Will Levis at the top of the second round last year. They seem to be committed to the rebuild under Levis for now. I don't think they're in a position to take anybody else right now. They did take Peter Skoronski in the first round last year, the left guard, who's been a really good, he's a good addition to their line. They could still use help at tackle, and I think you could go tackle here. There are still some really good tackles on the board, but they're not the best players. They don't have much in their wide receiver room outside of DeAndre Hopkins, who's on a 1-year deal.
Mm,
I don't know if DeAndre Hopkins is going back or not, but I'm going to presume probably not. Um, and I think he's kind of at the point of his career where he's a mercenary. He's going to go with whoever pays him the most money, and I can't imagine it won't be somebody else who could use his services. So the best players on the board right now: Brock Bowers, the tight end from Georgia. He's still on the board at 8. I would give serious consideration to Brock Bowers here.
100%.
Now they have a good tight end, a good young tight end, but Brock Bowers is better. So I would consider that. I mean, for Will Levis, having a target like that would be important. Layatu Latu, the edge rusher from UCLA, is a consideration here. He's the best edge rusher left. I mean, on the board, period. Zerjan Newton, Johnny Newton, the defensive lineman from Illinois, is on the board. I think they could use some help there too. I don't think the DBs are quite at this point where you want to take them an 8 in this class. They're good, but they're not this good. And then you got Roma Dunes, who's wide receiver 3 in this class, I would say. The wide receiver from Washington, who has had an outstanding year. And I think when we thought about it, we're like, what does a young quarterback need more than anything? He needs he needs a good O-line, obviously. We know that. But he definitely needs a weapon. He needs somebody who can be his main target. And with so much uncertainty in the wide receiver room in Tennessee, I think the pick here is Rome Odunze, wide receiver from Washington. So do you want to tell us a little bit quickly about Rome before we go on to the next pick?
So, yeah, Rome is an incredible pick here. Again, a guy who I think could be a wide receiver 1 in a lot of draft classes. Rome Dunze out of Washington, 6'3", 215 pounds, a true senior, 4-star recruit, former track star. He's projected to run a 4.34, 6'3", 215 pounds, a 4.34, 4.19 agility drill, 37 vert, a 10-1 broad. You can see here for people watching, he has 20 deep catches for 655 deep yards, which are both first in the country. He has a 70.8 contested catch rate. For anybody who watched our first episode about wide receivers,
he heard it. Roma Dunes heard it.
Yeah, listen. We had him down at our wide receiver 5 in that list, and the only reason we did it was because when you're a big receiver like this guy, you got to be able to make contested catches. Well, he did it. He went from about like a 22%.
It was a 25%, and he shot up to 70%. He was incredible this year, man. I mean, this guy, bottom line, he put up elite numbers. He's like the prototypical X receiver on the outside. He's winning contested catches. He's fast as hell. He's going to blow up the combine. He's going to run a 4.3 something or other. Big, strong, physical receiver. Runs good routes. Number 1 of the country in deep catches. Number 1 of the country in deep yards. Great player. Another guy who would potentially easily be viewed as wide receiver 1 in almost any other draft class. But here, wide receiver 3. I think this is an easy pick, honestly.
Yeah. There's really nothing he can't do. He does everything at a high level. 81 receptions for 1,428 yards and 13 touchdowns. So there it is. Pick 8 for the Tennessee Titans, Rome Odunze.
All right. Let's move on to number 9. The New Orleans Saints, Monty. By this point, they'll have pushed back another $350 million in cap somehow and sign a bunch of free agents somehow. But as it stands, they need help. They need help at the offensive line. Trevor Penning has been not good, so they could take a tackle here. They could use some help in their pass rush. They could just go best player available because they're kind of a mess. And so the best players available on the board right now is either Brock Bowers, tight end from Georgia, or Layatu Latu, the edge rusher from UCLA. Who are you taking here?
I'm going to go ahead and take Layatu Latu. I think he's fallen far enough at this point. I think he is legitimately one of the best players in this draft class, and he could have gone earlier if not for his injury concerns. Layatu Latu, he is out of UCLA. He's 6'5", 265 pounds. Was a 4-star recruit, and he's a 5th-year player. But he actually, really, this is only his 3rd year playing football. He's 2 of those years he was injured, and he actually medically retired because of a back and neck injury. He was originally at Washington, and that's why he is still available at this point. It is scary. Those things are very scary. And, a natural comparison for him, the UCLA, the medical retirement, is going to be a Jalen Phillips, from another, former UCLA edge. But Layatu Latu is, look at this, a 96.1 PFF grade. That is an insanely elite number. 94.8 true pass rush grade, a 24.7 pass rush win rate. He's winning a quarter of the time in his pass rush. A 94.4 pass rush grade, a 79.1 run defense grade. So still solid in run defense. He had 15 sacks this year and 11 hits and 38 hurries. He does everything, man. This guy is the best edge in the country. Not a single doubt in my mind. The only reason he might not be edge one is because of the injuries and that medical retirement he had at one point. But this is at 9. I think this is where you start to consider that risk, and I think it's a home run. Do you have anything
Yeah.
else you want to add
No,
to
I think
this?
Latu is he's a guy that, like you said, he's as long as he stays healthy, he's gonna be a force in the NFL and a guy that typically would go top 5 in any draft class. The injuries are gonna pull him down. I think the fact that we're even talking about him in the top 10 despite his injuries is a testament to how good this guy is. So I think this is an easy pick. I think you take this guy and you have your edge one for years to come. Hopefully he stays healthy. You want this guy to have a long career.
Yeah, I
Let's
would.
go on to
I
number 10. Oh, I'm sorry, you have something else on this guy?
No, I was just gonna say, like, he's one of the only, I would say, blue chip guys left, but I don't know if you can call him blue chip with those injuries, but he's right, he's right there despite it.
Yeah. Which is a great segue to number 10. Number 10, the
Yep.
Tampa Bay Bucks. Their needs is hilarious. They need everything. Quarterback, running back, tight end, guard, center, edge, linebacker, cornerback. They need everything. And a team that needs everything who's not in position to take a quarterback should take best player available.
Yep.
And I think this one is easy. You take the best one on the board is Brock Bowers. We've mentioned him a few times. We've mentioned him since like the 3rd overall pick or the 4th overall pick because he's that good, but he's a tight end, so he's fallen in the draft. I don't think this is falling. I think this is actually the proper place where Brock Bowers should go. Somewhere in that 8 to 12 range is where I expect him to go, depending on who's drafting where. But I mean, for those who don't know, Brock Bowers is special. He is he's a Bolitnikov finalist as a tight end. So
Yep.
for the best pass catcher in the country as a tight end. He's an outstanding blocker. He's the key to the Georgia run game as a blocker. He's an outstanding pass receiver. He has an 86.7 receiving grade. This guy is a truly generational tight end prospect. 18 missed forced tackles as a tight end. Number 1 in the country.
And
Three
that's with
deep
injury.
catches. That's with injury. He's been playing hurt this year, yet he's still been putting up incredible numbers. He has 3 years of data since his true freshman year that are just some of the best you've ever seen from any tight end. Healthy, this guy is, you can make an argument this guy, outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., is the best offensive weapon you can get in this class. Especially as the NFL, and we'll have to have a pod about this one day, how it really, really, really undervalues tight ends despite their production. And having a tight end who can produce as a pass catcher at this level is a cheat code for any offense. It really
Especially what
is.
you have
And
to
I
pay
think,
him too.
yep, they just make less money. So to me, this is easy. You take the best player available. You take Brock Bowers, and you walk it in, and you got whoever your quarterback is. Brock Bowers is going to make that team better. So the Bucks
Yep.
take Bowers at 10.
Yep. So Brock Bowers, 6'4", 240 pounds, a little bit smaller for a tight end. He'll probably try to get his weight up, but that's going to be the only question on this guy. 4-star
Yeah.
recruit, 3rd-year player. Both his parents were college athletes. His dad was a college center. His mom was a college softball player. So he was born to be a professional athlete. This guy is best trait, I think, is like you said, he has 18 missed forced tackles, and he's only played 10 games this year. He does it every single year. He's led the country, led tight ends and missed forced tackles every single year since he's been it. He had a 92.1 PFF grade as a freshman, a 90 grade as a sophomore, an 84.1, but again this year, but again, he's been hurt.
Yeah.
He could have been the number 1 drafted tight end as a true freshman. He is a special player between his blocking ability, his great catching ability, and his what I think is the most important trait in a tight end is his ability to force missed tackles and do something after the catch. I think that's where you see the Travis Kelce's and the George Kittles of the world really separate themselves once they can learn how to find space. I think he will be one of the elite tight ends. And if you can promise me Brock Bowers is going to be what I think he is, I would have no problem taking him in the top 5 picks, but it's just the worry about even if he's a little bit less than what we think he's gonna be,
And it's a
where
bust of a pick. Yeah,
yeah. So,
it's
but
tough. 10 sounds good for Brock Bowers.
here it's worth it. So let's go
Yep.
ahead and make that pick.
All right. Let's go on to number 11. As of now, the Las Vegas Raiders have the 11th overall pick. They also need everything. They need a quarterback, a running back, an entire offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, DBs. There's not a damn thing that team doesn't need. You should be looking at quarterback here. I think that's a serious consideration. You're back in that territory where you might be looking at QB4 in this class. But I think they're in a tough spot here. So if they're not moving around the board, I think they need so many things. You want to get a game changer. You want to get a guy who can impact the game on either side of the ball. So to me, the player that's left on the board here that does that the most is a guy we both loved in our reviews of defensive linemen, Johnny Newton, Sergeant Newton out of Illinois. This guy is a beast of an interior defensive lineman. He's a pass rushing specialist. He's great in the run game. Just a solid player year after year after year in college. Last 2 years have been really elite level production. I'll run through it very quickly. Last year, he had a 91.5 overall grade in PFF. This year, 84.7. But this year, he had 8 sacks, 7 hits, 29 hurries. This is an interior defensive lineman. You know, we're getting used to this crap as fans of Dexter Lawrence, but this is not normal. You know, you're not supposed to be able to do that. He's a special pass rusher from the inside. He changes the complexion of your whole D line and your defense. This guy's a game changer. Not all D linemen are created equally, and Johnny Newton is not equal to other defensive linemen. So, to me, this is an easy pick. You take Johnny Newton here. I don't know if I have anything else. I mean, I'll just give you the background on him very quickly. 6'2", 295, so maybe a little undersized, but like I said, he makes up for with his explosiveness, his speed, his pass rush. He was a 3-star recruit. He's a redshirt junior. Played running back in basketball in high school. You see that athleticism show up on the film. And he's got the highest PFF WAR, wins above replacement, among all interior defensive linemen. So to me, this is set up your defense, give them a foundational piece in Johnny Newton, and just move on. Do you have any other thoughts on him?
Not really, man. I think you mostly nailed it. He's an all-round great player. There's nothing he doesn't do well. He's so polished already. He's advanced. You see a 15.2% pass rush win rate, which is elite for an interior defensive lineman, and then a 7.4 run stop rate for an interior defensive line, which again is an elite percentage right there. Maybe not quite as special as pass rush win rate, but very special. And this is a huge need for Vegas. This is something that they're going to try to address, and they've been wanting to address for a while. So I think it's just need fits BPA here. I think it just didn't really have to think about it too much here. It just made sense. It was just one of those picks that's like, yep, I love that.
Yep. All right. Let's go on to number 12. You want to handle this one? The Los Angeles Chargers.
Sure, I'll handle this one. So this is one that we were thinking a little bit for a while. We're going back and forth. They have needs at running back, wide receiver, tight end, D line, linebacker, cornerback. I think if Bowers fell here, I would have loved Bowers here. I think that'd be a great fit. They could have gone Johnny Newton. I don't think you could go Kool-Aid McKinstry. I don't know if I love the value here, even though if it fits on the board. There's lots of good edges here they consider. There's plenty of good offensive tackles here. And I think that's ultimately where we decide when, you are going to have to build around Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert has had to deal with a lot of shit the last couple years under Brandon Staley. And it looks like they're going to move on from him, and they're going to bring in a new head coach and maybe even a new GM. And I think the first order of business for that new head coach or GM is let's build around Justin Herbert and give this guy the best situation he can. And they have a hole right now at right tackle. They have a great left tackle in Rashawn Slater. So I think we take the best right tackle on the board. And forgive me for the pronunciation, but out of Oregon State, Talesi Fuaga. and he is 6'6", 334 pounds, a 3-star recruit. He's a fourth-year player, and he is just a great football player. He is not somebody who actually made our offensive tackle list.
Yeah.
He's somebody who we missed on, but the more I've looked into this guy, Oregon State has been in a monster offensive line this year, and he's been a huge reason for that. He's allowed 0 sacks in his entire career as a starter. So, he only has allowed 2 hits this year. He has allowed 12 hurries, but although that he's a solid pass protector, a good one, I would say, where it comes into it is he is an incredible run blocker, like an elite run blocker. 90.7 run blocking grade, a 90.7 zone grade. This guy, I don't have the numbers on me, but I saw something along the lines. I think he led the country in big time blocks, whatever they call that. That's one of those weird PFF grades, but you see this guy constantly burying defenders into the earth. And I think having a guy like this across from a technician like Rashawn Slater would really give them offensive line that could be one of the best in the leagues. I think you get 2 bookend tackles on that team, 2 guys who kind of bring different skill sets, and I love this pick for them. How do you
Yeah.
feel?
I think he's a solid pick. I think he is the best right tackle right now, technically in this class. It's interesting. There's a couple other guys who are pure right tackles right now who are there
Yep.
too. Could have gone with JC Latham, who's been playing right tackle from Alabama, who's had an outstanding year. Um, Evan Neal Jr. But like he's a big block of a human, but he's been really great. Or my personal favorite is Amarius Mims of Georgia, who's been playing right tackle, who's sort of gonna get. I think he's gonna get comps to Andrew Thomas. Technically sound, athletic, leanish for the position, but really solid.
More
But good
raw.
players. But I agree. Flogga is probably the right pick here for the Chargers. I think they take them, they bookend their tackles. They've got a good interior line developing as well. We don't know who the Chargers head coach is going to be. I think it's Brandon Staley's got to be on the way out at this point. You like I can't imagine he survives this. So
Yep.
we don't know what they're going to do, but we're going kind of positional value here. I think that's the point, right? It's first round. You have your quarterback. You've invested in wide receiver multiple times. You can make an argument they're going to go wide receiver here because the Quentin Johnson pick looks terrible right now, but they still have enough wide receiver talent and they have a great quarterback where they shouldn't be reaching for a wide receiver here. I think you take your tackle because it's the right positional value and you move on. So I think that's a solid pick.
All right, so let's go ahead and pick it, and we move on to pick 13 with the Cincinnati Bengals. So we'll go into some of our thought process here, Sal, for why we went with the guy we went with.
Yeah, I think the Bengals are interesting. Everybody knows they need offensive line help. They always need offensive line help. So that's definitely high on the list. I think they could use a tackle. Jonah Williams is a free agent, and it's unclear what they'll do with Jonah. They may need a wide receiver because T. Higgins is a free agent, and it's unlikely they're going to pay him, top of the market value. But here's my thought process here. I think that they can't franchise tag both of them. So what they're probably going to do is franchise tag T. Higgins. I think that's the more valuable player. And they'll probably tag and look to trade him. I think that's the most likely outcome with T. Higgins. What can you get for T. Higgins? Another first-round pick, maybe? I think that's conceivable. Yeah. Right? Like a swap directly for a first, kind of like the A.J. Brown trade a few years ago.
Yep. I think
your mic is a little bit. Are you far from like?
Yeah, I'm probably far. Yeah, I think that's very possible.
Yes, I think from that perspective, I think this is a really good wide receiver class. I think the Bengals can find a way to trade Higgins, get a first somewhere, get a wide receiver somewhere later in this class. I think they're going to lose Jonah Williams in all likelihood unless they find a way to sign him to a deal. So assuming they lose him, I think you take a right tackle here. I think that's the thinking. And we just mentioned all the 3 right tackles. One went off the board to Fuaga. I don't know if the Bengals are in a position to wait to the second round to try to see if they can swing on a right tackle or later in the first. I think you have Latham and Mims on the board here. you pick your poison, take whichever one you like more. I think for the sake of our exercise, we went with JC Latham, the right tackle from Alabama, who's had an outstanding year. So I'll go into him very, very quickly. JC Latham, I called him Evan Neal Jr. He really is Evan
Mhm.
Neal. He's massive, 6'6", 326. Not as thick as Evan Neal as a frame, but a big guy. He was a unanimous 5-star recruit, the number 2 overall prospect in his class. He's really just full of talent in his third year. Had a lot of issues with like balance and other things last year, but he put it together this year. Um, he's had a solid grade overall, 80.9 PFF overall grade. He's been improving year over year, which is something you want to see. He's only had 1 sack and 7 hurries all year, which is really good for a guy who played over 800 snaps. Um, he's solid all around. Run blocking grade, 78.2, solid. Pass blocking grade, 82.4, solid. Zone grade, 84.5, really good. True pass set grade, 81, just really good, consistently good all year against different types of competition. I think he's developed into a very good right tackle, fits their needs. So I think JC Latham is the pick here. You could make a case for Mims, but I think we just went with a guy that we thought would fit them a little bit better. Do you have any other thoughts on this guy?
No, I don't have too much. I think JC Latham is, it's a projectable player who's already a solid offensive tackle. I have my concerns, like you said, with like the balance and things like that. But there's a lot of good offensive linemen in this draft, and he's not going to be the last first round offensive tackle you're going to see in this mock. A little hint there. There's a
Yeah,
lot going to be going.
OT4 already, and we're at pick 13, just to give you guys a hint. So we're heading
It's a
there.
great offensive tackle class.
Right.
Great.
It got better than when we did our review. Like it just kept
Yeah.
getting better
It
and
was
better. The
already
guys
good.
stepped up. Yeah. All right. Let's go to pick 14. Right now at the 14th pick, the Buffalo Bills. Man, they haven't been this high in a long time. And we don't know if it's going to end here, but the Bills are on the clock at 14 here, out of the playoff picture. Their needs are clearly wide receiver. They could use a tackle. They could use some help on the D line. They always like taking D line in the early rounds. They can use a linebacker. They can use a DB. Um, I think you can make the strongest case here for either wide receiver, a pass rusher, or a cornerback. And I think we're right at the territory where the cornerback value is beginning to match this area. So I
Agreed.
gave strong consideration to this pick when we talked about it to the top cornerback in the class, Kool-Aid McKinstry. I really thought long and hard about that pick. But at the end of the day, I do think that the Bills are likely to go in another direction. What do you think? What was your thought process when we made this pick?
Well, when we made this pick, my eyes set on one player when he fell to this point, and I think the clear top wide receiver left. Uh, I'll just go ahead and announce the pick because that's what we did. Keon Coleman out of Florida State here, great value I think here at 14. 6'4", 215 pounds, 4-star recruit, third year player. He was actually a Michigan State transfer. He's a size speed freak. He's gotten I think Brugler compared him to Demarius Thomas, which I thought was a good comp. He's a great like highlight reel contested catch guy. Ironically, his contested catch numbers aren't overly high with only a 33.3. Keon Coleman is getting a lot of hype in this draft. And I like Keon Coleman. And I love him here. And I think he's a perfect fit for the Buffalo Bills. But I will say, I think that I clearly have Malik Nabers and Roma Dunze over him. I don't think I
Yeah.
even considered Keon Coleman earlier. He's a size speed freak, which people love at wide receivers. But you and I, Sal, we are both very high in route runners. That's
Yep.
something we value a lot in wide receivers. That's something Keon Coleman still needs to work on. And I mean, I think that shows up in his yards per route run, only a 1.74, which is
Yeah.
really, really not that good. Um, you know, 71.7 receiving grade. I don't think that's really fair to him. He's definitely a better player. That the data just doesn't love him here. He's a much better player than the data is showing. Only a 3.8% drop rate, only 2 drops on the year. I think that shows how reliable his hands are. But what do you have on Keon Coleman?
Yeah, I think this guy, his size, his frame, and his speed are calling cards you can't ignore. I mean, he has first round attributes. And I think that for a guy of his size, his stature, his speed, who doesn't drop the football, he had 2 drops all year, you know, that's kind of all you need because in the NFL, like, yes, it would be great if he can run better routes. It would be great if he could have a better amount of yak. Um, but at the end of the day, the windows, like we mentioned, like the windows are tight. Yak comes in different ways in the NFL. You know, it's not running away from guys with just because you're faster than them all the time. A lot of times it's just being physical and gaining those extra yards. I think Keon Coleman translates better. I'm willing to bet that his game translates better to the NFL than it does in college.
I agree.
Uh, and I think he's a perfect fit for a guy like Josh Allen who's going to throw him fastballs and throw it into tight windows and trust his reliable hands and his frame and his massive wingspan. I don't even know what it's going to be, but I bet you it's like 90th percentile, to take advantage of all of those attributes. And he's going to be a really solid NFL receiver. I think he's going to be a high volume NFL receiver. I think this guy's
Yep.
going to get a lot of targets. I think he's going to be a true wide receiver one type. He won't be wide receiver one with Stephon Diggs if he's still there, but
Mm.
he's of that prototype. High volume, a lot of targets, a lot of catches, and just a guy who picks up chunk yardage in that way. I don't expect him to run away from guys all the time in the NFL. I don't expect an elite route runner, but he doesn't really need to be with his frame and how reliable he is. So I think he's a good fit there. That's kind of all there is to this guy, I think. I think there's a lot of parts of his game that can be improved upon, but to me, that's projection. He may
Yep.
project better than he's looking. That's why I think he's going to be a better NFL receiver than he's in college.
Yep, I
Um,
agree, and I think, we'll see if Stephon Diggs is still there. I think Keon Coleman's the perfect, you know, Batman and Robin type wide receiver duo right
yeah,
there.
yeah. You don't need another route running specialist if you've got
Yep,
Diggs there. To be honest. All
yep.
right, man. Let's go on to number 15. So number 15 is I mean, the Denver Broncos. How the hell did they find their way all the way down to 15? Uh,
Yeah, a lot of wins in a row.
Yeah, I mean, they really turn it on here, and they kind of saved their trajectory. But what do they need? You could argue they need quarterback. I think they still kind of have a long-term quarterback issue, but with the Russell Wilson contract and the fact that he's playing better with Sean Payton, I think that need gets pushed a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm not taking quarterback here. Um, they definitely need wide receiver. I mean, we just don't know what they've been trying to trade away their wide receivers forever, but they still have Jerry Judy.
Yeah.
And they drafted Marvin Mims last year. Um, they still have
Sutton.
KJ Hamler. They have Sutton. So I don't know what they're going to make of that room, but like they're doing pretty good work with them right now, and I think this class is deep enough where they can think about dipping in later. At the end of the day, I think they're going to go with best player available to keep building on their defense, and pass rusher here makes a lot of sense at 15. The best pass rusher left on the board in terms of production from this year is actually Chop Robinson from Penn State. The other guy you could take here is Jared Verse from Florida State, who was our edge one going into the year. It had a little bit of a lesser year than we would have expected. Chop Robinson had an outstanding year. I'm taking Chop Robinson here for the 15 at 15 for the Broncos. I think this is a really good fit with that defense. I think Chop Robinson is a remarkably effective player. He's a little undersized, for guys who are edge rushers, but he doesn't play undersized. I think we compared him to the Water Boy with
Yeah.
the way he plays. He has an incredible motor. He's a third-year player. He's 6'3", so most of these edge rushers are like 6'5", 6'6". He's 6'3", 255 pounds. He was a four-star recruit. If you haven't seen Chop Robinson play, just find him on YouTube, watch him. Watch some Penn State games. It's hard to find anybody with a motor like this. This guy is insanely, insanely turned on hot motor all day long, and this sounds
He's
terrible
see
the way
ball,
I'm saying
get
it.
ball.
Yeah, he just attacks the ball. I mean, he's an incredible edge rusher. I'll go through his grades really quickly. He put up a 90.8 grade this year from PFF. He was 90.6 last year, so very consistent. He had only 3 sacks this year and 5 last year, but he had tons of hurries. He had 34 last year, 18 this year. His pass rush grade 92.3, run defense grade 76.3, true pass rush set rate 93.1, pass rush win rate. It's a number that we talk about only the elite guys in the NFL get above 20% consistently. Chop Robinson's at 20%. The edge who went before, we didn't mention it, but I don't think you mentioned it, but Laiatu Latu was at 24.8%,
Yep.
which is bananas. But Chop Robinson's up in that high territory. I think he's a good pick. He's an edge rusher that's going to set their D line up. I think I'm taking him here for the Broncos. Do you have anything else to add on this guy?
No, I don't really have much to add. You mentioned that the production's best here. I think you could argue for the other guys because, the box score is not high for him, but when you read off those advanced analytics, you can see how good of a player he's actually been, even though it hasn't always shown up in the box score. I think you could make the argument here though for the all three edges that were left. It was Chop Robinson, Dallas Turner, and Jared Verse. I think all three of those guys, and you can even throw Braylon Trice in there.
Mm-hmm.
All those guys I think would have an argument here, but I think Chop Robinson's the right pick. He feels like a Denver Bronco. I don't know why.
He just does. Yeah. He feels like a guy who could play out there. I think, honestly, at some point, the way a guy plays on Saturdays on film, you just have to accept it instead of just projecting out things and shooting them down for size. Like the way they play is the way they play. And I think Chop Robinson plays a certain way that you want him on your team. I think this is a pick that people make and they're happy about it. Let's move on to 16. Right
Yep.
now at 16, just outside the playoff looking in, man. It's the Seattle Seahawks.
And we have
This
their
one is
second.
we do have their second. So we need them to keep losing games. But the
We
Seattle Seahawks, they are interesting, man. So they don't need a lot. So Geno Smith had an outstanding year last year. He's having a not quite as good, but a good year this year. Their
Yeah, I think
wide
he's
receiver
hurt.
room, yeah, he's been playing hurt. That's by the way, that's that West Virginia defense mechanism. I apologize for our listeners, but you have to. He's never going to let me take any shots at anybody from West Virginia, not even like a nice shot. Their wide receiver room is stacked. They've got DK Metcalf. They just drafted JSN last year. Obviously, they have. Why am I blanking? It's getting
Tyler
late.
Lockett.
Tyler Lockett. Um, they've got a good offensive line. I mean, their tackles are set, and Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas. They could use some help on the interior, but they drafted a center last year in Oluwatimi, my guy from Michigan, who's sitting behind Evan Brown and developing, but he's probably going to be their long-term center. They could use some guard help here. Um, they can use edge help. Although some of their edge rushers like Boye Mafe have stepped up and have had good years. Their D line has been better than expected. They don't have a lot of overt needs. Their secondary solid. They took Devin Weatherspoon the year after they took Tariq Woolen. They have good safety play. You start looking around, you're like, this is a pretty good team. Where are they going? So I think there's two ways to look at this. You can go BPA here and just keep loading up talent and say we're going to make a run for this with Geno, which I think is a
Yep.
lot of what people think they'll do. And that may be what they ultimately do, right? That might be it. They just say, we got Geno. We're making a run for it. We can't turn down all this talent on the board.
There's great edges available.
Yep. I mean, Jared Verse is on the board. Dallas Turner's on the board. And I have something tells me they may just go in that direction with a guy like Turner or Jared Verse. You can see, Pete Carroll loving to add those guys to the room and make a run at it. But I've had this gnawing concern for the last couple of years. Like, when are they going to take their quarterback? When are they going to take their quarterback? Because Geno Smith can't be the solution forever. Maybe they think he is. Maybe they think he's got 3-4 years left in him and that they're going to make a run with him every year. But wouldn't it be smart to hedge your bet here and take a developmental guy, with Geno Smith in the first round? You have such a good roster. You can manipulate the board, and this is a deep draft class. We told you guys, solid up and down for several rounds. They don't have a lot of overt needs. I think this is a great place to get value in a quarterback, honestly. You're at 16th overall.
Yep.
You have 3 quarterbacks off the board. I think you can actually, if you're the Seattle Seahawks, you're in a position where you can take a swing on a guy who has high upside, who doesn't have to play right away. So we went through this exercise. This took us a while, but where we landed on this was we think the Seattle Seahawks at 16 would be smart to consider taking JJ McCarthy, the quarterback from Michigan here. I think this is a good spot for JJ. I do think he's a first-round quarterback. I don't think that I think there's a small chance he falls out of the first round, but I think at the end of the day, he's 20 years old, projectable. He was a five-star recruit. He has an elite NFL arm. He has a howitzer. He has pinpoint accuracy, as you've mentioned. He's just a great quarterback prospect who doesn't get to show everything he has because of perhaps the way Michigan runs their offense and is run heavy. Maybe they don't think he's ready. I don't know. It's hard to say. We're projecting. But he's young and he's projectable. He's got he's already got the traits you're desiring. He's a good runner. He has a big arm. He needs to be he needs to be seasoned a little bit before he's ready to play in the NFL. I think that's fair to say. And I think he's best suited going to a team that is willing to let him sit and learn for at least most of 1 year, if not a full season. I think this is a good spot for JJ. What are your thoughts on this?
I love this spot for JJ McCarthy because I mean he is our QB3, as we talked about when we were talking about Jayden. Me and you personally, this is our QB3, but I think we are both in the spot where we don't necessarily know if we would value any of these guys as a top 10 quarterback. Yeah, we're hoping, JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, Quinn Ewers, all these guys still got to play in the playoffs. Things can change. We have no idea where all this is going to still play out, but I think 16 is a fantastic spot to take a shot on a guy like JJ McCarthy. I think that's right about where he probably will end up going. And I think the landing spot is fantastic for him. I think as a guy who's already playing in, this run first offense where they want a quarterback who can take care of the ball and things like that. That's what Seattle wants to do. That's what Seattle did with Russell Wilson. I mean, you've seen Russell Wilson start succeeding in Denver again as they're taking the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands. And
Yeah.
I think that JJ McCarthy is the perfect quarterback for Pete Carroll, where they can rely on the run game. JJ McCarthy's already kind of run a system like that. And when he gets a shot, he has the athleticism to make plays. He has a big arm. Yeah, 81 adjusted completion percentage, which is third in the country. He's accurate. He can continuously make plays. 71.2 pressure grade. It's a very good under pressure grade. 87.8 passing grade, 91.3 intermediate grade, 92.9 deep grade, 90.1 pressure grade. He's successful in a lot of areas of the field. He is a guy who has a thin frame. You don't totally know what you have in him because of that offense. And he is shown some inconsistency. He put on a stinker versus Bowling Green in Maryland this year. There's games where he doesn't look like the first round quarterback, but other games like Michigan State where you can really see the intangibles. So I think here is the spot to take a guy like this. He has a great arm, one of the best arms in his class, and reportedly runs somewhere between a 4.4 and a 4.5. So you get great athleticism. I love this pick.
And that's why I don't think he's going to fall to the second round. I think, he has five-star tools, five-star traits, and he's going to test well. And he's going to have a solid resume. Maybe not an outstanding Heisman type resume, but a really solid resume to fall back on. And at the end of the day, he's projectable. I mean, he kind of checks all the boxes of what these teams are looking for, especially if they're willing to sit on him for a little bit. I think it's a great pick. I wouldn't be unhappy if the Giants took him. I know it's a lot of controversy. The Giants people don't like him. They don't think he's right. I would not be unhappy if the Giants manipulated the board and they took him. There are a lot of scenarios in which I think it would make sense. Maybe people won't be happy if they took him at 4 overall or 5 overall, but I can see a world in which the Giants take the BPA, especially if they have a shot at a guy like, I don't know, Malik Nabers,
Marvin Harrison.
or Marvin Harrison, and they took that guy, and we used their picks to move back up into the first and grab JJ McCarthy. That would be a haul, right? Getting Nabers and McCarthy would be a haul. And so there are scenarios in which I think not only does it make sense for the Giants, but people would consider it a home run. But I think in this case, since we're not doing trade ups, I think this is a good landing spot from Seattle. Yeah, let's go to 17. I'm sorry. Go ahead. If you have any of those.
No, yeah, I think that's a great spot. So yeah, with the 16th pick here, take JJ McCarthy out of Michigan, 6'3", 202 pounds, third year, 4-star recruit, former Elite 11 guy, former hockey player. So yeah, once again, I really like this pick. But we'll move on to 17 with the LA Rams.
So 17, the Rams, they much like some of the teams we've mentioned, they kind of need a lot of things. They need a quarterback, they need a lineman, they need D linemen, they need linebackers, they need DB. I give serious thought. I don't think they're taking a quarterback here, honestly. Although we've made the case that Bo Nix is such a perfect Ram, I think this is a little rich for Bo Nix, honestly, at 17. I think this comes down to: do you want to go? Which side of the trenches do you want to go to? Is what this pick really comes down to. You can make a case for DB, right? You can say like you traded Ramsey. They need to rebuild their DB room. This is a good spot for the DBs, but there's some really good O linemen on the board, right? There's still, we still have Amarius Mims here. I think I would give him some consideration at this pick. Kool-Aid McKinstry is still here from the cornerback. Jared Verse, the edge rusher, is here. Dallas Turner's the edge rusher here. At the end of the day, if you're going BPA, because that's just what you probably should be doing here, in my opinion, they're going to swing for the fences here and go for the top projectable edge rusher here. And I think that's where we landed with this pick. We think that they could use an impact pass rusher. I think the player here is clearly Dallas Turner. It's the edge rusher from Alabama, going here 17 to the Rams. Outstanding value getting Dallas Turner here. Really, let me give you guys a little bit of background on Dallas Turner. He is an elite kind of player. He was only, he's only in his third year, but he's a 5-star recruit, 6'4", 252. He was a guy that was more projection than production coming into the season. And I think, do we have him at edge 5 or 4 maybe, right? When we hit with our early thing. It was somewhere in that range. I don't think
4 or 5, yeah.
Yeah. Because he
didn't
produce. And, he didn't produce at the level that he had a 73 grade last year. But, of course, he's playing next to Will Anderson. Maybe that took away some of his opportunity to showcase. This year, he put up an 82.3 grade. He's been getting better and better every year. He had 10 sacks, 32 hurries, 10 hits. He's going to get a chance to play against J.J. McCarthy in that semifinal game. So it's something to watch. 80.4 pass rush grade, 90.7 true pass rush grade, 20% pass rush win rate. So there's that 20% number again. 70.9 run defense grade. And all around really reliable, high-end edge rusher, pass rusher. But when you watch Dallas Turner, it is worth mentioning, the dude is a sociopath. He's a killer.
He is.
Like he's out there, and when he hits, he's hitting you with the intent to do harm. And
killed Jayden Daniels.
He really did. So yeah, that's another one. Jayden Daniels, he takes brutal hits, but that was not his fault. That was just Dallas Turner trying to decapitate him on that one play. So listen, for an edge rusher, that's kind of what you want. So he's just a great player. Right? Do you have anything to add on this guy?
Yeah, to the point you said, like I saw a video of him after he tackling Jayden Daniels, just took his head and shoved it back down into the turf. Like he is a like a dirty, like hard hitting type player. Like he's got an edge to him, and he's
going to be penalized. He's going to get a lot of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties in the NFL. I can tell you that right now. When he plays, he's what was his name? Who was that dirty? That one guy, Dominican Sue, yeah. That's who he is. Like at least temperament wise, the way he plays with that nasty edge to him. But you know what? On your D line, you want that guy. He sets the tone. He's fantastic. He's a great prospect.
Yeah, he was a guy that I really liked when we did our edge previews. Even when he wasn't necessarily have the full path set moves, like I said it in the preview, like even when he didn't have the moves, he was so athletic that he would run past the offensive lineman and then would get back to the quarterback in a time to make the sack without even a move. He'd just run around because he was that athletic. Now that he's adding,
he's going to blow up the combine.
Yeah, he is. And now that he's adding, pass rush moves and things like that, he has good bend. And one thing to add too is the LA Rams have a really versatile defense under was it Raheem Morris? Is that who their defense coordinators? They have a really diverse defense, and they brought in guys like like Leonard Floyd to help with that type of defense, or the Von Miller, who's a guy who can do a few things. Dallas Turner fits that mold. Dallas Turner is a guy who can play coverage, he can play run defense. He's a great pass rusher. He's a do it all edge rusher. Wink Martindale would love this guy for sure. I don't think he'll be here, but wherever he is, he would love a Dallas Turner.
It's a maniac. All right, man. Let's go to number 18. Okay, we're chugging along. We're getting there. We're past the halfway point.
Yep.
The number 18 pick belongs to this. This is the Arizona Cardinals. This is the pick they got from the Houston Texans last year when they traded. When the Texans traded back up to the 3rd overall pick to take Will Anderson, who was coincidentally the running mate of Dallas Turner last year at Alabama. The Cardinals got an extra 1st-round pick out of it. Great value for them. So they're picking here at 18. We mentioned earlier they took Marvin Harrison Jr. 3rd overall. They got their wide receiver. They could still use O-line help here. They can use D-line help. They can use a linebacker. They can use a cornerback. They can use all sorts of stuff here. So they still need to build their roster back up. They're doing a good job already. What we did here was we said, all right, this is a good time to kind of just go back to get the best impact player you can get here. There are a lot of options on the board. I think O-line does make sense here. They did take Paris Johnson last year, though, in the 1st round. He's been a solid right tackle. You could go with a left tackle here, but I think there is a bit of a drop-off from this point forward in terms of left tackles, and we opted not to do that. So what we did was we said, all right, I think the best player here is probably this is where the cornerbacks are going to start going. Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback out of Alabama. He's our cornerback 1. Great name, great player. For those who don't remember our breakdown of Kool-Aid, just an outstanding athlete. He is, I want to say, 6'1", 195. So he's got the right frame. He's going to run he may run a 4.2, 4.3. He's really fast. Short area quickness is outstanding. Great length, great ball skills. Had a solid year again. Maybe not quite as outstanding as people thought that he might blow up, but he got an 88.1 grade overall. His coverage grade was 86.3. Run defense was 85.8. He's a very good tackler, very good in run support. That's something that's underrated and under-discussed when these guys are coming out. If your DBs are good in run support, that leaves them on the field. You can leave them out there, and they make big stops. His coverage grade overall is 86.3, as I mentioned. He allowed 45% completion rate, which is really outstanding. Forced 10 incompletions. He had 6 coverage stops. He had no interceptions this year, but he only allowed 1 touchdown, which is really incredible for a guy who logged 788 snaps. So just a really good player. Add him to the room. The Cardinals need kind of help everywhere. Right now, their cornerback room is, they got Antonio Hamilton. They have Starling Thomas. Not much there, right? But they do have Budda Baker back there at strong safety, and I think adding Kool-Aid McKinstry to that DB room with Budda Baker immediately improves it. So he's the pick here.
Yeah, I thought this was a spot that they really needed to add a corner. They're like, as you mentioned, they don't really have any household names there at cornerback, and they had a guy by the name of Patrick Peterson for a long time. I'm not saying Kool-Aid McKinstry is Patrick Peterson, but he's another guy who was a great athlete, was a highly touted guy coming out of high school. He's been a very good cornerback in college. He sticks on the hip of whatever wide receiver he's playing with. He's very technically sound, very good athlete. You went through the stats. So yeah, with the 18th pick out of Alabama, 6'1", 195 pounds, a 3rd-year player. Like I said, former 5-star recruit, CB1 in his recruiting class, Kool-Aid McKinstry to the Arizona Cardinals.
Awesome. All right. Sitting in the 19th spot, right on the border of making the playoffs or not making the playoffs is the Atlanta Falcons. This is where it gets interesting because this is where it's going to change depending on who goes into the playoffs and who doesn't.
Yeah.
But the Falcons obviously need a quarterback. They can't do this Desmond Ridder thing much longer. But they could use help in wide receiver. They could use help in edge. They can use help in cornerback. They could use help kind of in everywhere. But they don't have a bad team. Like I don't think they have to reach on anything here. Um, the way I look at it is the Falcons should be looking quarterback here. But if they don't love anybody at this spot, they shouldn't reach either. The other way to look at this is I think the Falcons might be a team that's ready to win. They're a team that should be chasing a veteran quarterback. Really.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if this is a team that should be drafting a quarterback right now. The way they've gone backwards in setting up the roster, the way a lot of Giant fans want us to do this, which I think is really insane, which is just draft everything but the quarterback and then struggle to lose enough games to get a quarterback, and then you have to either reach for a quarterback or you do what's probably the right thing, which is try to get access to a veteran either via trade or for agency. So I don't think we should go quarterback here. We're going BPA, and they could use a damn pass rusher. So, their pass rush room, their edge room is not the most impressive right now. They did take Andre Abichetti a couple of years ago from Penn State. Hasn't really done a whole heck of a lot there. They have Lorenzo Carter, but they really need an impact edge rusher. And look who's sitting here. Our previous edge one in this class, Jared Verse from Florida State. I think this is the pick here. I think this is a solid pick for the Falcons. Jared Verse is an outstanding football player. He fell a little bit this year, a little bit, and that's why. And mostly he fell because other guys rose up. I wouldn't say he had a terrible year or anything, but he had a solid year.
He really picked it up towards the end too.
He did, and he's showing more of like the guy he was last year. He would have been edge 2 last year behind Will Anderson. I mean, 100%. If he had come out, he would have gone ahead of the guy the Raiders took. I'm blanking on his name, Tyree Wilson, who's having a terrible year. But solid. I mean, overall, I'll run through it quickly. I think you guys remember Jared versus the guy who went to Albany first, transferred, put on 40 pounds of muscle during the COVID year after building a home gym and just cranking protein and lifting. Went from 220 to 260. Has been an absolute monster in college. This year, he had another great campaign, 11 sacks, 35 hurries, 2 batted balls, 13 hits. He's had a total of 27 sacks in the last 3 years, which is insane in college. 90.4 pass rush grade, 90.3 true pass rush grade, 20.6 pass rush win rate. That number again, he's in the right part of it. His run defense grade is not quite as good at 64.3, but I don't think that's an accurate reflection of his ability. This guy's a great pass rusher who can kind of do it all on the edge. So to get a guy like this who normally would be a top 10 pick in most years at 19, I think is incredible value.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a testament to this draft class, and it's a testament to these edges, because truly Jared Verse could be edge 1 or he could be edge 4. Like he happens to go edge 4 in this mock draft, but he could have gone edge 1, especially considering injury history and things like that. Jared Verse here is a steal, and the Atlanta Falcons seemingly have been connected to pass rushers in every single draft. Every year, they haven't gotten the top edge rusher any of the times. I think this time they finally get lucky and they get Jared Verse, who I think would be an immediate impact edge rusher. Jared Verse, you went over some of the things about him already. He's 6'4", 260 pounds. He's a Feldman freak. He hit up to 21.14 miles per hour on field. He benches 455 pounds. He squats 550 pounds. He power cleans 360 pounds. This guy is a special athlete. He's a well-rounded football player. I think this is one of the best values that's come up in this mock so far. So, even though they're not getting their quarterback here, I credit the Falcons for taking if they took a Jared Verse at this point in the draft.
I mean, it's worth mentioning they could go with, Bo Nix here. They could go with Michael Penix Jr. here, the sort of the plug and play quarterbacks. But I just feel like realistically, the Falcons can't go into this draft class looking for their quarterback. I think this is a need they're going to hit in free agency or via trade before draft day. And that's why we went with Jared Verse here.
Yeah, I could very well see them trade for Justin Fields. I don't know if that's their answer, but I could
or
easily see them doing
or
that.
make a play for Kirk Cousins. I mean, I think
Or
this is a team that could use him.
for sure. Or bring in, it's not the most sexy pick, but they could bring in Ryan Tannehill, who has a connection with Arthur Smith. So
Yeah,
that's
a
possible
lot
too.
of ways they can go here. All
So
right,
that,
let's go on. We are up to pick 20. The Green Bay Packers, who have been surging of late. They may be drafting a lot higher than this by the time the draft rolls around, but they're at pick 20. They could use help, and they can use a running back, but there's no running back that's worth taking here. We'll get into that later, but not this high in the class. They could definitely use a tackle. David Bakhtiari's kind of over at this point. But they're getting good tackle play. We talked about this. They have a really great O-line coach. He's turning the guys they've taken over the last couple of years into good tackles. They're servicing that line well, and they don't have to reach here. If they don't like a left tackle, they don't have to reach to get one. I can see them taking a tackle here, but they could use some help on the D line. But if they really want to make a run at this, with Jordan Love kind of emerging, it looks like they did it again, right? It looks like they've been stashing away a quarterback again for a few years, and the guy's coming out and he looks like a legit quarterback. They can start becoming contenders pretty quickly. Again, just kind of like the Cardinals, I want an impact player here. I want a player who can help me make a run if I'm the Packers. So I could go tackle here, but they could use help in there. They could use a safety really badly. They need a safety. Or a DB slash
yeah,
safety slash cornerback, a great athlete, maybe.
maybe a
This
linebacker.
pick, this is where it gets fun. With the 20th pick overall, the Green Bay Packers are taking Cooper DeJean, cornerback of Iowa, if you want to call him a cornerback. Cooper DeJean, you know what? I'm going to let you do Cooper DeJean because you love this guy. You tell us about Cooper DeJean.
Cooper DeJean is a great pick here. Cooper DeJean, out of Iowa, 6'1", 207 pounds. He's a third-year player, four-star recruit. This guy was, all around freak athlete in high school. He played everywhere for them. He was a quarterback and set, passing records. He was a wide receiver and set receiving records while he was also playing. Was he throwing it to himself? I don't know how he's setting records in both those spots, but he was. He was a three-time letterman in basketball, three-time letterman in track. He set records for long jump, the 100-meter dash. He was a state champion. He state champion on their relay team. He's supposed to run supposedly something in the 4.3s, and that's at a guy who has the size to play safety, linebacker, like not like a true linebacker, but like in the box line, the safety slash linebacker. And he's a true outside corner. Like he could get drafted and play outside corner and be a damn good one. It's funny. Me and you were talking about where to go with this pick, and we were trying to pick between some of the corners and should we reach on a safety. And then we were just like, wait, Cooper DeJean, that hits everything. It solves every problem they're looking for. You're not reaching on a safety. You're taking who if he was a safety, the best safety in the draft. You're taking who our opinion cornerback 2 in this draft. I mean, this is a great pick. Very Packers pick, teaming him up with ex-teammate Lucas Van Ness. Just feels like such a Green Bay Packer guy. I love this pick. What do you have on Cooper DeJean?
Not much. I'm gonna say 2 words on him more and a couple more words on him, and then we're gonna spend a few minutes on the next guy, and then I think we should power through the last few picks just to get through this thing. But Cooper DeJean he's the modern day athlete that is sort of positionless in the defensive backfield. He does everything. He's an eraser. He's an eraser. You put him on your biggest concern on offense as a defensive coordinator. You say you take away that guy, and that's what he does. And I think you need him as an athlete in a modern NFL defense. You need guys like this, and he's a big plus if you got him on your team. So I think he's going to be such an impact player. I think he's mostly a nickelback in the NFL. I think that's how I would classify him. But I think he could play outside. He could play pure safety. He could do everything. So that's all I got. I think he's such a. I can so see this guy as a Packer. I can see the uniform already. Um, all right, let's move forward. Number
Speaking of a
21
guy you can see on a NFC
on a
North
uniform.
team, Yeah.
The Minnesota Vikings are picking at 21. I'm not going to go through all their needs. They need a quarterback, and I have been saying this guy's a Viking for probably the last year, and it's one of my favorite players in this class. It's Michael Penix Jr., quarterback out of Washington. We've gone through the quarterbacks. We don't have to go through a lot of detail at this point. Michael Penix Jr. is a plug and play winning quarterback. He's an elite passer already. He's an older prospect. He's not the most mobile prospect, but he can move enough. He's athletic enough to scramble and get yardage, but he's not going to run. Where he wins is with his arm. He has a howitzer. He has great accuracy. He understands leverage. He's a polished passer. He's a guy that you want to put into an offense that has good bookend tackles, a solid overall line that gives him just enough time to throw the ball, and weapons that can stretch the field and threaten the defense at every level. That is the Minnesota Vikings. They are tailor-made for this guy. This is one of the few circumstances where you can say the needs of a pre-built team match perfectly with a quarterback coming out of the draft. And I think it's just Michael Penix Jr. I want to see this. If he's not a Giant, which I'd be happy if he was, but if he's not a Giant, I want to see this kid on the Vikings because I want to see him put up video game stats up on that turf
Yeah.
for years to come.
I'm right there with you. I love this fit. I have my questions about Michael Penix Jr., but I think that the Minnesota Vikings comes all my questions if he went there. He has the blocking to give him time, and you don't have to worry about him having to create time for himself with his legs. I had some questions about some of his accuracy consistently, but I think when you have guys like Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, those guys will make plays because he's not totally missing them. He just, like I say, hits more of a door than the doorknob type of guy. And if you can get the ball near those guys will make the play. And he has all the confidence in the world in his arm. He'll put it all over the field. That'd be a fun offense with Michael Penix. I'm
Absolutely.
totally with you. Keeping
Got
him
to
in
see it.
purple. So,
All right.
yep, Michael
Let's
Penix out of Washington, 6'3", 213 pounds, 3-star recruit, Indiana transfer, 6-year, played baseball and ran track. But, yep, Michael Penix Jr.
let's power through these last 10 or 11 picks, man.
Yep.
The Colts are up next. They're on the clock at 22 overall. Their big needs are really wide receiver or defensive back. I think there are some wide receivers still on the board here, like a Emeka Egbuka. There's some of the guys who will probably go more in the second round, like a Don Mitchell, Xavier Legette. I don't think they reach here. I think they take the best player. I think Nate Wiggins, cornerback out of Clemson, is the best player on the board here. I think he fits that Gus Bradley defense very nicely. It's a lot of cover three. I think he plays well in cover three. He's a big ball hawk. He has great ball skills. He has good length. Technically sound. A lot of upside as an athlete. Good fit here for the Colts.
Yep, I love this pick. 6'2", 185 pounds out of Clemson, third-year player, 4-star recruit. Like you said, he needs to go to a zone system. This is the fit here. There's a lot of experts, including like Brugler, who are very high in this guy. I think he could have gone much earlier. I think he's an awesome fit next to who's the guy they drafted last year? Kansas State.
Julius Brents.
Julius Brents. Him and Julius Brents would be a nice combo for a long time, I think, out there. So, yep, Nate Wiggins to the Colts at 22.
23, the Pittsburgh Steelers are on the clock. They could use a lot of different things. They could use some offensive line help. They can use a DB. They could use a safety. There's one guy who's sticking out here like a sore thumb, waiting to be picked. And I think he's such a Steeler. And it is Cam Kinchins, the safety out of Miami, the best safety in this class, in my opinion. Although you could argue it's Tyler Newton out of Minnesota, but Cam Kinchins is such a Steeler, man. He's the best single high safety in this class. He's probably the best athlete of the safeties. 6'2", 205 out of Miami. He was a three-star recruit, but he just shot onto the scene and has been locked down in coverage, in run support. He does everything that a modern center field safety can do. He can play in the box, outside the box, in coverage. He can take away tight ends. He plays with kind of a nastiness to him that I think would be perfect in Pittsburgh. So I love him in Pittsburgh at 23. What do you think?
Yeah, I know for anybody watching, the data obviously didn't love him this year, but from everything I saw, he still had a good year. He had a 90 PFF grade last year. He's a great player, man, and both him and Minka Fitzpatrick are pretty versatile players. I think moving those guys around the secondary would be a scary thing in Pittsburgh.
All right.
Cameron Kitchens, 23,
Cam
Pittsburgh
Kitchens.
Steelers.
Yep. 24. 24. The Houston Texans are drafting 24. The
Who would have
beauty of
thought?
drafting, the beauty of getting quarterback right. They're drafting
Mhm.
at 24. CJ Stroud has turned that entire franchise around. He deserves credit for that. They can go a lot of directions here. I think that, he's doing what he's doing is incredible work throwing in Nico Collins um and
Hank Dell,
to Tank Dell.
Noah
I
Brown.
think, and yeah, you got to get him a weapon here, don't you think?
Yeah,
You got to
I
get him
think
a real. You got to get him a guy that he trusts, if possible, somebody he's worked with. Oh, look who's on the board. Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver from Ohio State, who played with CJ Stroud at Ohio State and put up some incredible production with him in Ohio State. This just seems like a perfect pick to me. When we started looking at the board and how it fell, I do think Egbuka is going to be here in the 20s. He might even fall the second round. But if he's sitting there and the Texans are up, putting his old wide receiver, the rapport that he probably has with CJ Stroud on that already churning offense of the Texans just seems almost too good to be true. What do you think?
Yeah, man. If I had to put money on a pick, this might be one of them. Hey, they already asked CJ Stroud which wide receiver he wanted, and they took him already. What's going to stop them from doing it again? Like he got it right last time with Tank Dell, and Tank Dell, sucks. He just broke his leg. They really need to. They can't count on him at this point. Unfortunately, they really need to add a wide receiver. Amika Ibuka was our wide receiver 3 going into this year, and he hasn't had as good of a year this year. You can see this kind of number going from 83.1 to a 72 this year, but he's still a very good football player. And I think reuniting him with CJ Stroud is a home run pick here. So,
I think this man suffered from the quarterback play at Ohio State this
oh,
year.
it's so bad.
Uh, and I think going back with CJ Stroud would get him back to where he was the year before. I believe in the talent. I think he's an amazing route runner. He's a very good player.
Yep.
So I think it's a great pick.
So 24, Mika Ibuka at Ohio State, 6'1", 206 pounds, true junior, and a 5-star recruit. Higher than Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out.
He was. Number 25, the Kansas City Chiefs are on the clock. Talking about quarterbacks who don't have anybody to throw the ball to, like other than Travis Kelce, I mean, Patrick Mahomes does it with nothing. He really, I mean, just nothing. I'm giving nobody on that team any credit. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
like Rashee Rice shows a little bit of promise, but for the most, they need a wide receiver here. You
He's
just saw
cursing in
next
his
week.
Kermit voice right now about Mika Ibuka going.
They're pissed that he went, but you know what? There's somebody else here because we're in that second wave of wide receivers now, and there is a perfect target for him sitting on the board.
Yes.
I think Patrick Mahomes could use a guy who can stretch the field and be an X receiver down the field, a home run hitting wide receiver. Look who's on the board. It's Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver from LSU, a guy who we did not expect to be up here, but had an outstanding season at LSU. I think he's being mocked end of the first round, early second. That's kind of where I think he's going to land. I do think that. I mean, I guess I've seen some where he drops a little bit further, but I think he's basically an early second round pick or late first round pick. But the value here is solid for the Chiefs. He's a field stretcher. He's a deep home run hitter. He's become a very good route runner. I think with Patrick Mahomes, this guy would eat. 6'4", 205, big frame guy, really good with contested catches. I want to pull up the numbers as I talk to you. 58% contested catch rate. That's really solid. 2.65 yards per route run is solid. 73 receiving grade is good. Doesn't he got 7.7% drops, so that may be a little on the high side, but not too crazy.
It's fine.
But
Yeah.
but basically he's a deep ball monster. Second in the country with 632 deep yards. I think this is exactly what they need in Kansas City. Any thoughts on Brian Thomas here?
Yeah, man. I mean, watching the Jayden Daniels film, I loved what I saw from Brian Thomas. He is a field stretcher. He's exactly what they wanted from MVS when they brought him in, but he's just an unreliable player. To me, those 5 drops aside, I saw a reliable player when I watched Brian Thomas. I thought he had very reliable hands when I was watching him. He's a size speed freak. I I'm a big fan of Brian Thomas, and I think he was built to be a Kansas City Chief. I think that's a great landing spot for him.
Awesome. All right, 26. The Jacksonville Jaguars are sitting at 26. I think more than I mean, you got your quarterback, you've got some weapons around him. You're putting together a decent line, although they could always use some help there. What you need more, what glares out at you when you watch their games is their DB room is bad. It needs
Really
help,
bad.
and you got to get somebody who can be a good competitive safety, a good competitive cornerback or safety in that room. Um, there are a couple of options here, I think, at cornerback that are good value. You can go Kalen King out of Penn State. You can go Josh Newton out of TCU, or you can go Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. I think all these guys are good in this range. Um, I think the guy who's been the most impressive riser of the group is Terrion Arnold, playing opposite Kool-Aid McKinstry. He's actually some are saying he's probably having a better year than Kool-Aid McKinstry in many ways. And he's been really productive. He had an 89.8 overall grade. He had 5 interceptions this year. Really good ball production, hyper competitive, really good in run support. He had a 91.1 run defense grade, 86 overall coverage grade. Really productive this year. Came on like a bat out of hell. Got the ball thrown his way a lot, but he produced. So I think this is a great pick for the Jaguars here. Take Terry Arnold, cornerback out of Alabama. Do you have any thoughts on him?
Yeah, man, I agree with you. I think he's a great player. Like you say, he's really competitive, quick. Um, he's really good, like controlled footwork. He's a guy who can kind of do everything over there, and I think he could be their number one cornerback. He's a great run defender, great in coverage. So, yeah, 6 foot, 195 pounds. Actually, was a 5-star safety when he came to
Hmm,
Alabama. They converted him to corner. A
that's
third
rare.
year player. Yeah, but he's been up to the challenge, and I mean, I guess that probably shows in his run defense that he's a former safety. So, yeah, Terrion Arnold here, a great pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
All right. Moving on, we're up to pick 27. Pick 27 is the Dallas Cowboys. They're climbing. They're doing their usual. We're going to climb up in December thing. So the Cowboys are on the clock. They could use some help in a lot of areas. Again, running back is not something I would take this early. They could use some interior line help, but like at center specifically, I don't think you're going to take one this early. You could use a D lineman, but they have a good rotation. They took Mazzie Smith last year. Um, I think, you know, would you really need help with though? I think for the Cowboys is at tackle. Their tackle room it's aging. Um, Tyron Smith's getting up there. Karen Steele's not doing great. There's still some good tackles on the board. I think right tackle makes a lot of sense for the Cowboys here. I'm giving them Amarius Mims, the right tackle out of Georgia, at 27 overall. Uh, a little bit about Amarius. He's got the length. He's 6'7", 340 pounds. He was a 5-star recruit. He's a third-year player. He's had a really solid year in college this year. I think he was somebody we had as one of our guys that we thought would rise up, and he did. He had a solid year. He had a 74.8 grade overall, 78.8 pass blocking grade, 68.4 run blocking grade, 76 point true pass set grade. I know the grades are not overly impressive, but he had allowed no sacks all year, no hits, only 2 hurries in 297 snaps. Um, he's been solid. I think this is a guy that you can project to become better and better as he gets older and in the NFL. And I think he's a guy that I can see the Cowboys coach up and sadly become, a Pro Bowl type right tackle for years to come. You got any
Yep.
thoughts on Mims?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been hurt this year, so that played
Hmm.
into a little bit. But when he's been healthy, he's played well. I think he's a very projectable guy. He was a, I say 6'7", 340 pounds. So that kind of like a Neal like frame in that sense. And I think they had Evan Neal second or first on their draft board when he was
Yeah,
coming
they
out.
like guys like this.
He's a 5-star, so, like, he's just, like, a really good athlete. I think it's a great fit, and if it sucks, man, because all of a sudden they'll have Tyron Smith, they will have, Tyler Smith, they'll have Biadasz, they'll have Zach Martin, and now they have Amarius Mims. That line will be back to form if this guy hits. I hate this pick, which means
Exactly. All right, 28th overall, the Detroit Lions. Another team that went from bottom of the barrel to like competing. They're legitimate Super Bowl contenders. Um, they've really filled out their roster nicely. I think they have their solution for now at quarterback with Jared Goff and Hendon Hooker waiting in the wing.
Yep,
They could use some line help, although they, in the interior, but really they have one of the better lines in the NFL. That'd be more depth for them. They could use D line help. I think D line makes a lot of sense here. Cornerback makes a lot of sense here.
their
Um,
defense needs help.
yeah, I think they need some defensive help. I think specifically in pass rush. So this is a good spot where I mean, there's a guy on the board here who is a fantastic edge rusher slash D lineman. Guy we both love, would love the Giants to get their hands on him if he felt them somehow. But it is Braylon Trice, the edge rusher from Washington. Um, this guy is another hot motor maniac. When you watch him play, he's a beast. He's had a really great year. 88.8 pass rush grade, 72 run defense grade, 91 true pass set rush grade, 16.6% pass rush win rate. So not quite as high as some of the other guys, but he is a big dude. He's 6'4", 274. So he's bigger than most of these other edge rushers. I think he's more of a hand in the dirt 4-3 DN, but he can probably slide between 3 technique and 5 technique. Um, he wins with power. He wins with power to speed. The other way around. Um, Good player all around. I think that you put him in that room, he really helps the Lions. What do you think about Braylon Trice here?
I love Braylon Trice, dude, and he's just constantly converts pressures. And, last year he had 46 hurries. This year he has 49 hurries. Like, even though he only had 9 and 6 sacks, respectively, 15 hits in each year, those hurries, he's constantly getting to the quarterback and speeding up their clock. I really love his approach as a pass rusher. As you mentioned, he's really more of a power first guy. He reminds me a little bit of Khalil Mack. It gives me some, especially now in his older age, where he doesn't quite have the same athleticism as he did, where he'll just take an offensive tackle, put him onto one leg, and throw him. You'll see some of that with Braylon Trice. He's a really good player, man, and whoever gets their hands on it will be lucky. And I think he is an awesome edge to have across from Aiden Hutchinson.
I agree. He's a great player. It makes me sad to take him because I'd
It,
like him
it
to
makes
fall
me
to the
sad
Giants.
too. So,
Uh,
yep, 5th-year player, 6'4", 274 pounds, and a 3-star recruit. And there he
wow,
goes off the board, Braylon Trice.
this one's gonna hurt when I hear that name get called.
Mhm.
All right, let's move on. We are at pick 29. Moving right along here. The San Francisco 49ers, potentially the best roster in the NFL. Um, Sitting at 29 now, they don't have a lot of needs. It looks like they've got their quarterback situation filled out for now. They've got their weapons, um, but their O line is still not very good. It's not doing great. They lost Mike McGlinchey last year. He wasn't great, but he was better than what they're dealing with. I think this is a good spot for them to grab a tackle in this deep class, specifically a right tackle. And I think the guy who's been rising up the boards, who's really being talked up a lot right now, um, is Tyler Guyton, the right tackle out of Oklahoma. And that's who we took here. Um, Tyler Guyton is a special player. He's 6'6", 319. He's massive. Um, he was only a 3-star recruit, and he's in his 4th year. He transferred from TCU, but this guy has all the traits you look for in a tackle. He's big. He has incredible length. He has big wingspan, big hands. He's very athletic. He can really stick a tackle. I don't see this guy ever being a guard in the NFL. I think this guy's a true tackle, but he's damn good there. He's having a great season. He's an Oklahoma tackle. I mean, the data doesn't love him, but when you watch him on film, he's just everything you want in a right tackle. So I think, especially with that zone blocking scheme that they run over there in San Francisco, this guy could be really solid. I think he's the kind of athlete they covet. opposite Trent Williams. So that's my guy for the Niners, Tyler Guyton. You have any thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just makes sense, with Trent Williams getting older, and you can plug a Tyler Guyton in on the right side naturally because that's where he's playing, and really they need some help over there. Like you said, like the data doesn't love him, but he's not allowed any sacks this year, so that's a good thing. And he's more of a projection anyway. That's who he is. He's a big athletic guy. He's a traits guy. Um, He's gonna test well at the combine. He's what you look for when you're projecting an offensive lineman, and they can develop their offensive lineman. So that's a good pick for San Francisco. Tyler Guyton is another guy. Like we said, a lot of offensive linemen are going to go in the first round. I think Tyler Guyton is going to be one of them. A lot of good offensive tackles in this class.
Agreed. All right, let's keep moving. Number 30, the Baltimore Ravens. Serious Super Bowl contenders, outstanding roster. I think that here we're going kind of to some extent BPA, but I do think they could use some help bolstering up their defensive backfield. I think that's something I immediately thought of. They could use a wide receiver too. And I think they took Zay Flowers last year. I don't like taking the same position in back-to-back drafts. If you guys haven't noticed it by now, in the first round, I feel like you take your first round swing and you probably should wait the next year. It's not a great way to think about it, but I do think teams do tend to think like that. Um, I don't think they're going to go wide receiver here. They could. They can get one of the big receivers still left on the board, like a Donnie Mitchell. I do think their defense needs help to bolster up. Marlon Humphreys. I, I think is he a free agent after this year?
I don't
I'm not
think
sure.
so.
Okay, but he's
Might
hurt
be.
right now,
Yeah.
um, and I think they need help alongside him. I really do. And one of the better cornerbacks in this class, who may not have had the best year overall, but is just a great prospect right now. We both love him. Is Kalen King out of Penn State? I think he's a very good fit for the Baltimore Ravens. He can play zone. He can play man. Kalen King. He's had a bad year. Like let's just call it
Yeah.
what it is. He's had a bad year. Last year he was incredible. There was talks of him being like potentially cornerback one by
Yeah.
the end of this year. And he's just had a rough year in coverage this year. Just there's no way to spin this, but he's got the traits, right? I mean, he's gonna have that elite speed at like probably 4.3. He's 5'11", 190. He's good in his own system, but he can run man with anybody. He's got fluid hips. He was a four-star recruit. He was a basketball player. He ran track. Just a great athlete. I don't know what the hell went on with him today. This is a pick where I think the team does their homework and they're like, no, that great player is still in there, and we're going to take him because the upside is huge. This guy, if he didn't have like a strange year, this guy is probably going in the top 15, top 16. I think it's good value here at 30. And I think he fits their system well. Do you have any other thoughts on King?
Yeah, man, it's a hard pick to project because I mean he could have put himself into the top 10 with a good year, and he had a bad year. And maybe this drops him out of the first round or even the second round altogether, or it puts him like here. I really is hard to project him, but I think Baltimore, who has a real need here, this guy who has a lot of upside. You have Mike McDonald, who's their defensive coordinator, who is in the Big Ten. I'm sure he's aware of King, his relationship with Harbaugh. Has to play against him. I think that's a relation there. So we'll see. I like the pick here with Kalen King. I think it makes a lot of sense. So Kalen King out of Penn State here, 30 to the Ravens.
Let's go to 31. We're down to the last two. The Miami Dolphins are actually drafting 31 right now. As you guys know, they've got a powerhouse offense in terms of weapons. What Tua's doing with it, their run game, Mike McDaniel's doing amazing things. Yet they still could use some O-line help. You talk to any Dolphins fans, they want help on the O-line, um, both in the interior and a tackle. Um, they just signed their right tackle today to a long-term deal, Jackson.
Yep, Austin
I think
Jackson.
they're going to spend. I think they're going to try to find a guard or an interior lineman in the draft. This is a great spot for one of the more versatile offensive linemen in the class, Graham Barton from Duke, who's listed as a tackle. He plays tackle at Duke, but he projects on the interior. Um, In fact, he's played all his snaps at left tackle the last 3 years at Duke. He hasn't played any interior snaps.
I think he had
But
center as a freshman.
he did, yeah, as a freshman. This is his 4th year. So, um, isn't it? He's not an
Yeah,
underclassman, right? I
that's
believe
fourth
this.
year, I
Yeah,
believe. Yeah.
yeah. But he projects as either a center or a guard more than a tackle in the NFL. He can play tackle, but he can play all of them. He's a versatile lineman. He's a good athlete, solid all around. Doesn't give up a lot of sacks. Doesn't give up a lot of hurries. Really a chess piece on the offensive line. You can find a home for him on the interior and start him there the rest of his career. You can slide him outside. He reminds me a lot of Justin Pugh,
Mhm.
a guy who can move around, but technically sound, very good. I think this is a really solid fit here for the Dolphins. Do you have any thoughts on Graham Barton here?
Yeah, I think Graham Barton's a really good pick here. They have Connor Williams and Robert Hunt, who are both really good interior offensive linemen who are going to be free agents. Connor Williams is actually another former tackle who's now a center. So they let him go. They might replace him with a tackle, a center guy again. He's a really polished player. He has really good hand grip, and he's a guy who finishes blocks. He's one of those type of linemen, really technically sound. I think he can play. I think he can play five positions in the offensive line. He's one of those guys. I really like the pick here. Uh, so one thing I would mention, we also talked about the idea that they have Christian Wilkins, who is an impending free agent. I think Miami's going to make an emphasis to bring him back. He's too important to their defense. But by some way he gets out and leaves the Dolphins. You have a Miami local here, at least college wise, Leonard Taylor. He could have been a fit here, but I think in this case, Graham Barton makes a lot of sense. I think they're more likely to let one of those interior offensive linemen walk. So Graham Barton to the Miami Dolphins at 31.
Which brings us to the final pick, the 32nd overall pick, and this better not be the 32nd overall pick, which is the
Yeah, please.
Philadelphia Eagles. But there's a good chance it might be. Um, the Eagles obviously have a loaded roster. Howie Roseman's the best in the business right now. He's killing everybody. Um, Everybody knows if there's a weakness on their team, it is their secondary. Their cornerbacks are aging. And I think they're definitely going cornerback here. I think that it's hard to imagine a world where they don't. Um, oh, look who's on the board. An outstanding riser of an athlete cornerback from the University of Georgia. There is, how can you not see Howie Roseman not setting up the card for Kamari Lassiter here? Kamari Lassiter is cornerback from the University of Georgia. He's had a fantastic year at Georgia this year in coverage. And, he's really made a name for himself. He's 6 feet tall, 180 pounds. He was a 4-star recruit. He's another one of these Georgia guys who, in his 3rd year just explodes onto the scene. All his athletic traits find him. Incredible year in coverage. Fits that system well. I think he'd fit nicely into that zone system they run over there. Really could be potentially their CB1, but I think, the Georgia pedigree, the rising athlete, the need, it's just too perfect. Again, for Howie Roseman, for him not to take this guy. Do you have any thoughts on Lassiter?
Yeah, man, it makes too much sense. At this point, the Georgia connection's there. He's had a really good year. He's only allowed 40.5% for completion percentage and only a 56.2 passer rating, and he hasn't allowed a single touchdown on the year. Kamari Lassiter sounds like a Star Wars villain. Like it's just where it's
He
just
belongs on the
fits.
Eagles.
Yeah, it's just the Eagles, man. I think the pick makes a lot of sense. So, do you have anything else on him?
No, he's gonna torture us. He's
Yep.
he's but
So
it's a good
6 foot,
he's
180 pounds, 4-star recruit, 3rd year out of Georgia, going 32 to the Philadelphia
there you
Eagles.
go.
Super Bowl
So that
champions in this case.
hopefully not. Hopefully they take him at 31.
Yeah.
So
Or 30 or 29.
something just not 32.
Yeah.
All right. So there we go. There's our top 32. I know it took us a while. This is our longest episode ever. It's pretty late at this time that we're doing it, but I think we try to give you guys a good rundown of how we think NFL GMs might approach this, how the board might shape out. And, if you were surprised that some of these guys were lasting until the 20s, that's just a testament to what we've been telling you all these last few months, that this is just a damn good class. Like, the talent is incredible. It's incredible in this class. The depth. It's the guys who are getting taken in the 20s and 30s in a lot of classes are going top 10, 12. This is a freakishly good class. So
Yep.
you're going to see really great players get pushed to day 2, day 3. That's our top 32. I don't have any other words about this. I will say that this is our mock for the whole first round. We are eventually going to do a mock for the Giants, like a top 7 round mock. I don't know if we're ready to do that yet next week. We might. We'll let you know, guys know. Do you have any thoughts, Monty?
Let's try to get a better idea on some of this draft order. I think how it's going to play out. Some important games coming up, but we'll get
Yeah.
it out to you guys soon.
Yeah, I think we want to study some more players and see how this shapes out a little bit. But we'll bring you more stuff. As always, follow us at He's a Giant Pod on Twitter/X. Follow me at Queens_guy. Follow Monty at Monte Cristo at MONTECRI5TO. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple, all the major platforms. Please like, subscribe, give us 5 stars. We appreciate you guys being patient and sitting through this. We hope you have a better feel for how we think the teams might handle the draft board. But I'll give you the last word, Monty. Do you have any closing thoughts here?
Go Army, beat Navy.
Go. Yes, there is a football game this weekend. There is a football game in college. Go Army, beat Navy. You guys have a good night. Go Giants.
Good night, guys. Go Giants.